A giant aircraft stands on the tarmac at Marseille in France. It's been taken over by hijackers who are preparing the worst terrorist atrocity the world has so far seen. The men are heavily armed and carrying powerful explosives. The French Prime Minister faces a terrible dilemma. Storm the plane, lose 173 passengers and crew. But let it take off, and there'll be an even bigger price to pay. This will become a blueprint for defeating a terrorist hijacking. With eyewitness testimony and video recordings, this is the inside story of the hijacking the world forgot. It's Christmas Eve 1994. An Air France jet is on final approach to Algiers airport. It's the early morning flight from Paris to this former French colony on the north coast of Africa. The plane is an Airbus A300 with a crew of 12 on board.
3 greens.
This is no ordinary landing. Algeria is in a state of civil war. The area around the airport has been the scene of fierce fighting. There's a very real threat of missiles being fired at the plane as it comes in to land.
The flights to Algiers are only done by volunteers because of the terrorist threat. We're all aware of it. We accept the risk.
So dangerous is it that Air France, the French state airline, has asked its government if it really needs to continue these flights to Algiers. So far, there's been no reply.
100 feet. 50 feet. 20 feet. Leader thrust engaged.
The captain of Air France Flight 8969 is Bernard Delem, a highly experienced pilot. This is his first ever television interview. The events are still so threatening to him that he'll only appear in silhouette.
There were some security measures, like on any other flight, and a few extra ones since we were in Algiers. But at my level, I had no qualms about flying there. Even now, 10 years later, I can still say that I like doing in Algiers.
The plane will only be on the ground for the short time it takes to clean, refuel, and board the passengers for the return flight. They're mostly Algerians, but many are French, escaping for a while the perils of life in Algeria. 3 years earlier, Islamic fundamentalists had won the elections there, hoping to install an Islamic state. But then the military seized power and imprisoned their leaders. Since then, Algeria has descended into chaos.
Like every other year, I decided to come and spend the holidays in France, and I had a cousin with me. I was chief stewardess at Air Algeria, and I wouldn't take any other flight but Air Algeria normally. But when I arrived at the airport, there were no seats left. The flight was full. But an Air France booking agent suggested that I take the Air France flight. So I did. At least I'd be certain of taking off.
Boarding is nearly over, but then, another sign of the fraught security situation, police board the plane for one more check.
Presidential police, you two take the rear. Police, nobody move, please. Presidential police, we're carrying out an identity check. All right. No, you stay here, we'll handle it.
It'd be best if I made an announcement.
Okay, go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, good day. This is your captain speaking. There will be a short delay while the police will come to their cabin to carry out a passport check. Please remain seated. We apologize for the inconvenience. We should be on our way shortly.
Passport. Passport.
When they came towards us, they were armed. And that's really unusual.
Passports, please.
This unauthorized delay to Flight 8969 is making the military suspicious. Algerian special forces, known as the Ninjas, are already heading towards the plane.
I looked outside and I could see the ninjas out there, the Algerian special forces. I said to myself, why are there so many of them? Tarut means infidels. And when he said that, I knew straight away that they were terrorists. There it was.
All of you, get to the back! Hurry! Shut that voice of Satan! Sit down! You two, don't move! Nobody move!
We are not the police. We are Mujahideen.
The men are not police, but terrorists. They belong to a violent group of Muslim extremists. They aim to force an Islamic State on Algeria, no matter what it takes. And seizing the plane is part of that plan.
Inshallah!
When that happened, it was like a rock falling. Like lead. I don't know which. It was horrifying.
Look at this! This is a very powerful bomb! There are others just like it! Ready for a great fireworks show in the sky! We are the Mujahideen of the people! God has chosen us to die, and you to die with us!
The leader, 25-year-old Abdullah Yahya, is a notorious killer.
There is nothing to fear! God awaits us all in his heavenly paradise!
Outside, news spreads quickly, and reporters arrive at the scene. In Paris, the French Prime Minister is urgently recalled from his Christmas holiday. It's an international crisis.
I spent the whole afternoon on the phone trying to find out exactly what was going on. It was pretty confused. The Algerian authorities were determined to get tough, and it was difficult to discuss the problem with them.
Give me your jacket, Captain.
Back in Algiers, the terrorists decide to put on the flight crew's uniforms to confuse any army snipers. Meanwhile, in the cabin, one of the terrorists is not happy with what he sees.
Cover your head! Cover your head more! You too!
Their Islamic customs were not being respected. Men and women sharing the same toilets, sitting next to each other. And above all, women with their heads uncovered. That was intolerable for Lotfi, and it threw him into a rage. Lotfi's character is very peculiar. We called him the madman because really he was always on a knife edge. He had fits of rage. He was always on the brink of fury. What he saw there in the cabin was intolerable for him. He had to cover these women up.
Now, 2 hours into the hijacking, the terrorists want to talk to the Algerian military.
You in the tower! We have taken control of this Air France flights. We are the armed Islamic group. Do you hear me? Do you understand? Do you hear me? What is wrong with this thing? They don't hear me.
They couldn't hear you because you both talked at the same time. You have to start again.
You tell them. Do it.
Air France 8969. What do you want me to say?
The terrorists order Captain Delem to take off for Paris. They say they're going to hold a press conference there. But the plane can't move. The passenger boarding stairs are still attached, and the Algerian authorities have parked vehicles to block the runways.
Air France 8969. The passenger boarding stairs are still in place. Please remove them immediately.
They meet with a blank refusal. Things are starting to go wrong for the hijackers. The Algerian strategy is not to give way on a single point, but it's a dangerous policy, as they are soon to find out.
We are going to blow up the wall! We are going to blow up the plane and everyone in it! Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Armed terrorists have hijacked an Air France jet at Algiers airport. They want to leave for Paris, but the government won't let them. It's a stalemate, for the moment.
I'll say it one more time. Please remove the boarding stairs so that we can leave for Paris.
You think we are joking? We will show you how we are joking. We are soldiers of God. We are ready to die. We will show them.
The terrorists are about to send a message to the Algerian government. During the passport check, they've identified among the passengers an officer of the Algerian police.
Then 2 rows behind me, there was a policeman.
Can you come with us, please? We need your help.
He asked the policeman to follow him. It's crazy, I don't know if he knew, but he was very hesitant. He was walking, but reluctantly, because he didn't know what was going to happen to him.
Open the door, please. So please take our message to the government.
Few passengers are aware of the murder, nor are the pilots.
The first contact we were allowed with the cabin was when a stewardess was allowed into the cockpit to see if we wanted anything. I said, we'd like a glass of water, because it was hard to swallow, as you can imagine. Our throats were very dry. Just then, she whispered to me, they've already killed a passenger. I was dumbfounded because we had no idea. We'd heard nothing.
But the passengers are growing more concerned about what's going on outside. There are signs that the Algerian Special Forces are preparing for an armed assault.
The biggest worry that we all had was that the ninjas, the Algerian Special Forces, would attack the plane. Things were going on inside the plane, sure, but anything that would come from the outside would upset things, and that scared us.
As French Interior Minister at the time, Charles Pasqua knows exactly how the ninjas operate.
They were trained by us. We were taking a considerable risk by letting this plane stay in Algiers, because we knew that although the Algerian forces were perfectly capable of ending the siege, it would have ended in a bloodbath.
The Algerian military maintain their hard line, so the terrorists are about to raise the stakes again. Another passenger must die.
When they came for the second passenger, we knew things were going wrong. This passenger, he was different. He was Vietnamese, a diplomat. He was the real foreigner on this plane. This passenger was not cowed by their terror, and that must have bothered them.
The Vietnamese diplomat believes that as an outsider, he's being released.
The stewardess went back to the cabin and came back with a bottle of water and some glasses. She served us and whispered, it's not 1 now, it's 2. Immediately, I realized that we had really hit the jackpot.
As the hours go by, the crew and passengers begin to recognize the different personalities of the 4 men.
To make things simpler, we gave them names. Yaya gave us his name straight away, so that was easy. He was in charge. He looked a little bit like a student. He was friendly enough, very calm, except when he flew into a rage, and then he would act like a gangster. Lotfi, the madman, was the one who insisted we follow their laws, the one who was the most fanatic, the most fundamentalist. He'd already been in prison and been tortured. He had a hatred of the government, and he had a very short fuse. He was the dangerous one, the real psychopath. The third one didn't have a name. We called him Bill. He was a little bit simple. You wondered what he was doing there. And you could see him wondering the same thing. It was an error in casting. He was more of a goat herd than a terrorist. Then, finally, there was the killer. It was he who did the shooting, and who cleaned his gun afterwards without any remorse or feeling. I wonder if he knew what he was doing.
The killer in the group is becoming increasingly bizarre.
The tallest one, the killer, when we passed each other on the plane, he would take me by the neck and kiss me on the forehead. And later on, the meaning of this was more or less confirmed to me. People told me that this could be seen as the kiss of death.
Finally, Morin plucks up enough courage to voice his fears.
Can I say something? I want to ask you a favor. If you decide to kill me, I want you to promise me. I don't want to be killed by a bullet in the back, because when I die, I want to be able to see your face.
What are you afraid of?
Well, it's impossible not to be afraid with what's going on the plane.
You don't need to worry. Because if I kill you, you will be a martyr. You will go straight to paradise.
I can tell you that it didn't make me feel any better.
In Algiers, it's stalemate. Neither side is giving way. In Paris, the French leaders are frustrated. They believe their own special forces could bring the hijacking to a safe end. But the Algerians refuse to let foreign troops in to sort out an Algerian problem.
I asked the Algerian authorities extremely forcefully and urgently to let the plane take off, because I considered that it was a French plane belonging to Air France, which, although it had on board a majority of Algerians, had dozens of French there too. So it was for us to solve the problem.
Night falls. Air France Flight 8969 is pinned down by spotlights. The passengers have now been held hostage for 7 hours. Initial panic has given way to a tense calm. Few realize that 2 passengers have been murdered. The crew is working hard to defuse the situation.
All these buttons, like here, for instance, it's the APU, auxiliary power unit.
The role of a crew in these conditions is to keep things calm, to earn trust, to keep things going, which is very important. At the start of a hostage-taking, it's always violent. You have to buy time, to calm people, to show what you're like, to find out who they are, and so on. And then try to gain their trust.
There was the conversion to Islam of 2 stewardesses, of whom I was one. It was a request from the terrorists. I don't have any disrespect for believers, but if it could help calm the terrorists down, then I didn't have any problem faking a conversion.
We are going to blow up the world! We are going to blow up the plane and everyone in it! Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Through the night, the threats and ultimatums continue. But the Algerian government will not give in. It's a battle of wills.
At one point, it was quite calm. I made a tour of the cabin about 2 in the morning. There were 2 of them lying on the floor, between door 1 left and door 1 right. I thought, Look, 2 of them are asleep, one's at the rear, there's only one in the cockpit. If an assault took place now, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But that's as far as it went.
After a restless night, the passengers wake up. It's Christmas morning.
It was a marvelous gesture. There was one person we called Father Christmas because he said, "You've worked hard enough, now it's my turn." And he took round all the bottles of water and glasses to the passengers. The passengers joined in. That's to say, they tried to eat something, to do normal things, to make the atmosphere a little bit more normal and a little less stressful than it really was. It was the waiting, because in reality, we could do nothing but wait.
During the night, the French government has decided to send its special forces to the island of Majorca, as close to Algeria as possible without being accused of interfering. Colonel Denis Favier was then a major in charge of the French counter-terrorist unit, the Ingestion. Since the hijacking, it's feared that terrorists have put a price on his head, and he doesn't want his face to be seen.
The decision was taken to send GIGN to Majorca. An Air France aircraft was put at our disposal, identical in every respect to the hijacked aircraft, as well as an experienced crew who knew the technical side, all the details of the plane.
En route to Majorca, Major Favier's men have familiarized themselves with every detail of the A300 Airbus, in the expectation that they will get the chance to attack the plane. Back in Algiers, the terrorists release some passengers, mainly women with young children or people with serious medical conditions. But there are still over 170 people on board, a handful for the 4 young terrorists. And the passengers are not who they thought they would be.
I don't know how the terrorists organized their business. They certainly put a lot of thought into it. They obviously wanted to seize a symbol of France, and Air France is a national symbol. But perhaps they didn't realize that in an Air France plane at Algiers, most of the passengers would be Algerians.
138 of the passengers are Algerian citizens. The terrorists offer to release them, leaving only the French nationals on board. A gruesome indication, perhaps, of their final plan. However, the Algerian passengers refuse to leave.
It's true that in Algiers they were going to free some of the passengers, and they refused to get off. I think that one of them said, "If we leave, then afterwards they're going to kill the crew, so I'm going to stay." I think that this man was sincere. I can't explain it, but it was the truth.
The Algerian government has another trick up its sleeve. They've managed to identify the terrorist leader, Yahya, and bring his mother to the microphone to try to weaken her son's resolve.
Ma! Ma! I love you, but I love God more!
The Algerian government's tactic misfires. It sends Yahya into a boiling rage.
They went and got my mother. Can you imagine that? My mother! They went and dragged my mother over here! How many French are back there?
1 man and woman.
Go get the man. What do they think they're playing at? What do they think they're doing?
He was furious. He had no intention of changing his mind. Even the love of his mother, even his mother couldn't do anything.
Until now, the terrorists haven't targeted any French citizens. But their time has come. 2 staff members of the French embassy are on board, a secretary and a young chef.
Okay, now we will teach you how to play games with us. Are you listening to me? You tell them that if they don't let the plane take off, we will kill every single passenger one by one. Tell them.
My name is Yannick Beunier. I work at the embassy. They're threatening to kill us. If you do nothing, they'll start the executions. You've got to do something, and quickly. Quick as you can.
We care nothing for you. We are soldiers of God. We'll kill him and we'll throw him outside the door. You can come and pick him up.
Get me a magazine.
He was terrified, Yannick. He was looking at me, but he was terrified. Was he pleading with me to help him? Was he?
You two, we better off going back to your places. No!
I was saying to myself, no, it's not possible. It can't happen like this. It's not possible.
The door-open warning light confirms that the terrorists have carried out their threat.
Air France 8969.
You happy now? See what you get when you play tough.
On a assisté à distance.
We witnessed at a distance the execution of this man.
C'est quelque chose qui a été qu'on avait vécu.
It was something we lived through with great emotion in Paris, because we were patched into the conversations between the plane and the control tower.
The French government can no longer stand by and do nothing. Prime Minister Balladur gets on the phone and threatens his Algerian counterpart.
I told him that I would hold the Algerian government responsible for what happened and make it known to international opinion.
Balladur's threat works. The Algerian president caves in. Finally, after 39 hours of terror, Flight 8969 can leave for France.
Just then, there it was. We could leave. In the plane, there was a joy you could not imagine. And really, this impression that that was it. We'd succeeded. We had all succeeded, and we were going to be saved. We were leaving Algiers.
But there's a problem. All the time they've been on the ground, the captain has kept the auxiliary power unit running. It's a small jet engine in the tail of the plane which keeps the power supply going. It uses around 4 tons of fuel a day. Now there isn't enough to reach Paris. Only Marseille on the southern coast of France.
Navigation lights. On. Air conditioning packs.
Flight 8969 prepares to take off. The crew are relieved to be going home. Both they and the passengers believe that whatever the future holds, it can't be as bad as what they're leaving behind. They don't realize the horror that awaits them. After 2 days of terror and the death of 3 passengers, the Algerian authorities are allowing Flight 8969 to leave for France. The terrorists say they're going to hold a press conference there.
Before takeoff checklist completed.
But Captain Delem wants an urgent word with the terrorist leader.
What is it? What's wrong?
Look, since the start of this whole thing, I followed your instructions. You want to get to Paris to talk to the journalists. I'll take you there. But I want to know if you're going to blow up the plane between Algiers and Marseille.
Why do you ask if I'm going to blow up the plane?
Because the responsibility for these passengers is on my shoulders.
No, there's nothing to worry about for you or the passengers. We fly to Marseille, like you said, refuel the tanks, and then we go to Paris. I give you my word.
All right.
Good. Let's go.
Me, I believed them when they told me that the plane would not be blown up between Algiers and Marseille. I don't know if they would have given me the same answer between Marseille and Paris. When someone's got explosives, they're not for making a birthday cake.
We have 2 terrorists strapped in their seats in the cockpit, and they're so excited. They're like kids, excited, happy. What's more, they'd succeeded.
At 3:30 in the morning on the 26th of December, the plane approaches Marseille airport. They're unaware that Major Denis Favier and his French special forces have got there ahead of them from Mallorca and are now planning a showdown.
Normally you arrive on ground that's held by the enemy. But here it's the enemy who's going to arrive on ground where you are in total control. And that's a key element in the success of the operation.
50 feet. 20 feet.
For the terrorists, it's the magic moment. We are landing in France. We'll get fuel. We'll get provisions to take off again and go to Paris, because that's the objective. The airport is very dark. There are the lights of the plane and the little car, the Follow Me car, which we follow, and we do not go to the terminal.
The plane is being deliberately led away to a remote corner of the airfield. Tension is very high because the French government has received some alarming news.
While the plane was flying towards France, we received other information, according to which the terrorists planned to use the plane to carry out an attack on Paris. The information was credible, and we took it seriously. So the decision was made that no matter what, the plane would not take off from Marseille. No matter how high the price may be, the plane would not take off. We picked a very precise spot for the plane to park, and then we just played for time.
The French tactics will now be dictated by Major Favier. His plan is to wear the terrorists down. Whilst always appearing conciliatory, the French will spin out negotiations as long as possible. They know that Yahya and his men must be tired. The hijacking has now gone on for almost 2 days.
Air France 8969, we require immediate refueling.
27 tons!
27 tons.
The terrorists have learned from the flight crew that 27 tons of fuel will fill the tanks, far more than the 9 tons needed for the journey to Paris. It appears to confirm the intelligence report that the plane is to be used as a firebomb.
They say it's not possible because of the killings, because of what happened in Algiers. It's in all the papers. The workers who do the refueling are afraid. They won't come near the plane.
Tell them we want to go now. We'll do a press conference in Paris.
Air France 8969, they want to leave for Paris right away. They wish to hold a press conference in Paris. You say, why go to Paris while all the international press has come here to Marseille? They're all here. Why do a press conference in Paris? There's no point. We can do it here on the plane.
Major Favier has baited the hook. Will Yahya bite?
Tell them we want CNN. Tell them we want CNN.
Air France 8969, they want to speak to CNN.
The terrorists agree to a press conference aboard the plane, little realizing that it's all part of a clever plan.
Tactically, this press conference was important because it enabled us to get some of the passengers moved to the rear of the plane.
The negotiators asked that the front of the plane be cleared for the press conference. The real reason is to create a clear area for the French special forces when they storm the plane. Because what the terrorists don't realize is that the plane's doors can be opened from the outside.
Are they coming?
No, not yet.
By now, the plane has been sitting on Marseille's taxiway for 12 hours. The French special forces know how many terrorists there are and where they are. It's believed the French special forces planted microphones on the fuselage of the plane. Now they're waiting for the sun to go down to take advantage of the dark. On the plane, they know nothing of this. They're still waiting for the press to arrive.
Tower 8969. Everything's ready here. You can send the press now. 8969, what do you mean they're not ready?
No.
You said they were ready over an hour ago and you were going to get them. Come on, there's not much time left. There must be hundreds of journalists there. This will be the biggest scoop of their careers.
They're up to something. We can't stay here.
I assure you, it's...
Captain, move the plane over there.
I promise you, we'll be...
Captain, move it right now. Do it. Move the plane over there where the other ones are.
We'll be fine. I promise.
Move the planes! Go over there where the other ones are! Do it! Do it!
Let's go. Start engines.
Suddenly, all Colonel Favier's plans are in disarray. Yahya, the terrorist leader, now has the initiative.
Tactically for us, the situation was very bad. Our positions were based on the plane being parked at point A, and all of a sudden it's at point B. So we have to reorganize very quickly.
Captain Delem is forced to park right at the foot of the tower, close to the terminal and other flights. If they blow up the plane now, the casualties could be enormous.
Tell them it's too late now! There won't be a press conference. It's too late. It should have been done. Tell them to fill the tanks. We're leaving. They have until 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, we're taking off. Tell them, Captain, do it. I've had it. Do it.
Air France 8969.
Major Favier is having his men picked up as fast as possible to move to new positions. He puts snipers on the terminal roof, where they'll have a view of the cockpit. He only has a few minutes to set up his emergency plan, a cavalry charge of passenger boarding stairs.
3 air stairs and 30 men. This is the plan. Penetrate by the 2 rear doors, with 2 teams of 11 men each at the rear right and rear left doors, and then a penetration by a smaller team of 8 men at the front right door to gain control of the cockpit, since we know that the terrorist leader is in the cockpit. Our intention is to cut off the cockpit from the rest of the plane.
By 5 o'clock, no fuel has been delivered. The authorities have no intention of allowing the plane to take off.
5 o'clock comes round, and there, it's the moment when Yahya has to do something.
Yahya enters the cabin to choose his 4th victim, but he seems reluctant.
He chooses a member of the crew, the youngest, the most foreign, who had made the mistake of telling him he was an atheist.
I don't want to do this. But I got no choice.
I don't know what was going on in Yahya's head, and we never will. I don't know if he changed his mind, but he kept putting off this execution. So instead of that, he fired on everything around.
The hijackers know they are in the endgame.
But then they discovered there was a public address and they started reciting verses from the Quran. It was very difficult because it was the prayers for the dead. We had to prepare ourselves for death. We were going to die as martyrs. God was waiting for us. There was silence, and all of a sudden it was a state of panic.
The terrorists know the French negotiators are in the control tower. They decide to send them a message.
One of the terrorists opened the side window of the cockpit and hosed down the control tower. The glass shattered all around us. We were literally machine gunned.
Since we had landed in Marseille, there had been some moments of tension, but nothing like what seemed to be about to happen.
We're gonna succeed in our mission, Captain. Don't worry about that.
Major Favier has been given carte blanche by the French Prime Minister Edouard Balladur. He decides the moment has come to act.
When the terrorists started firing with an automatic weapon on the tower, there was danger inside the plane, so we now had justification for an armed attack. That attack was carried out from the air stairs, which are mobile vehicles.
They're coming! The Taru are coming!
At that moment, everybody understood, them and us, that it was the beginning of the assault.
The cavalry charge is underway. This is actual footage of the attack.
There are 8 of us on the front right air stair. The first air stair gets to the aircraft. There's a small problem with the height, as it was a little bit higher than the door. The door hits the top of the air stair, a slight step back, the door opens, the air stair touches the plane, and the group goes in.
Then it's the apocalypse.
Get down! Get down!
And then the group that has gone in comes under a deluge of fire from the terrorists who shoot at everyone who enters, an extremely murderous fire. There's not a moment's doubt about the nature of this gunfire. They are shooting to kill.
At the rear of the plane, the other 2 squads of Favier's men enter.
So I hear, hands on your head, don't move, hide, get down as low as you can. I just wished to escape. The situation we were in was extremely violent, so I pulled the overcoat I had over my head so I wouldn't see the tracer bullets whizzing past, nor what was going on around.
Hundreds of bullets are whistling through the cabin. Grenades are exploding. There's smoke and confusion everywhere.
I was in a rather bad spot, so I tried to make myself as small as possible. You stop breathing, and you imagine that you're hard enough to stop the bullets.
The snipers on the terminal roof can see the terrorists in the cockpit, but frustratingly can't get a clear shot. The co-pilot is blocking their view. But that problem is about to be solved. Actual video footage shows the co-pilot, Jean-Paul Borderie, falling onto the hard concrete. Yet he still manages to stagger away to safety. It gives the snipers the chance they've been waiting for. At the rear of the cabin, the French Special Forces is evacuating the passengers through a hail of gunfire. But cabin steward Christophe Morin finds himself unable to escape.
I tried to take with me a woman, a passenger who had been sitting next to me, but she was too fat, she could not come. So we just held hands.
Unbelievably, only a few minutes after the assault began, most of the passengers have been rescued. By now, only 1 terrorist is left alive, but he's going down fighting.
There was only the flight engineer and me left in the cockpit. We looked at each other, and there's just this one terrorist. He looks at us, one after the other. His 3 colleagues are here, dead or nearly so. Out of spite, he could have killed both of us. He didn't. What more can I say?
I think that after 54 hours, there is mutual recognition and respect, quote-unquote, between the terrorists and the hostages. Yes, bonds were created in this drama. And I think these bonds were activated, and that they perhaps contributed to saving the lives of some members of the crew.
The French news footage captures amazing scenes of the battle. A GIGN man is blasted out of the plane by gunshots. The final surviving terrorist holds them at bay for almost 20 minutes, but his time and his ammunition are running out.
The flight engineer and I looked at each other. We knew exactly the situation we were in. As long as there were gunshots, we knew we could die. But once it stopped, or when we thought it had stopped, then we said, all right, it's over.
But it's not over yet for the captain and his flight engineer. The Hijacking are not sure who were the terrorists and how many are still alive. Everyone is suspect. The battle around the cockpit has been so fierce that everyone believes the flight crew are dead. The French special forces suspect that any survivors may be terrorists in disguise. The flight engineer is hustled off the plane and handcuffed.
Get up! Hands on your head.
I'm the captain of the plane. I will get out, but not with my hands on my head.
I would never have left the cockpit with my hands on my head. After all I have been through, I would not be punished like a child.
When we saw Bernard and Alain come out, we couldn't believe it. Alain was handcuffed and his shirt was covered in blood. He said, I'm deaf, I'm deaf. But we said, yes, but you're alive. We told them, he's our flight engineer, let him go. It was incredible.
For 20 minutes, the gun battle has raged on board the crowded aircraft. Hundreds of shots have been fired, numerous grenades exploded. Yet all 173 passengers and crew have survived. Captain Delem himself escaped with bullet wounds to his right elbow and thigh.
The crew had a specific responsibility, the duty to save the hostages and to safeguard the plane. The crew in general and the captain in particular, they all rose to the occasion.
9 of the 30 Hijacking men have been wounded, 1 seriously.
When I assessed the gravity of the Hijacking men's injuries, and when we learned that none were fatal, then yes, I could consider that the operation overall had been a success.
Out of the 161 passengers who survived the hijacking, only a few have suffered slight injuries. A huge relief to the French Prime Minister.
I cannot say that I was calm that day, but I considered that there was no other decision to be made than the one I took. So the only thing that was left for me was to hope that things would unfold well. And as a matter of fact, they unfolded exceptionally well. I would not have dreamed that they would go that well.
All the French special forces and the crew members received high national honors for their courage.
For a long time, I kept seeing the faces of the 3 dead passengers that I couldn't save. Then, when the time of the medals came, I realized that I had helped save 170 people. It's a lot more gratifying, and it allowed me to mourn and get over it. I don't wear the medal, but I'm proud of having it, and I consider that we deserved it. We only did what we were supposed to, our job.
It was a textbook mission, one of the most successful anti-terrorist operations ever carried out. But the traumatic experience will never leave the survivors. Zahida Kakachi, the passenger, could not stay in Algeria. She became so anxious about her safety, she emigrated to France. Stewardess Claude Bernard was thanked by Air France, but never worked for them again. Christophe Morin suffered the same fate. Since this horrific experience, his outlook on life has changed radically. He now works for a charitable organization. Captain Delem eventually returned to flying duties. After a further 9 years of service, he's recently retired from Air France. Later, a former leader of the Algerian terrorist groups, Omar Chiki, confirmed that the plan had been to blow up the plane over the Eiffel Tower, the symbol of the French nation. Hundreds might have been killed when the plane crashed down onto the crowded streets of Paris. They never tried again, and the world would forget this hijacking until 7 years later.
I went to do some shopping and I bumped into a friend who said a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. I went home and stayed sitting in front of the television for 24 hours. I couldn't move or eat or do anything. All those images came back to me, and I asked myself, is that what was supposed to happen to us?
I was convinced that the terrorists wanted to crash the plane over Paris. To them, it would have been a great feat. Crashing a plane on the Eiffel Tower or the Élysée Palace would be an extraordinary feat.
Above all, I kept thinking, we had apprentice terrorists, boys who didn't understand very well what they were doing. But voila, they taught everyone a lesson.
It's a few days before Christmas. The residents of a small Scottish town prepare for the holidays. Danger is fast approaching.
The street was on fire, lawns were on fire, and houses were on fire.
I had never seen anything like that.
Christmas is just going to be remembered for all the wrong reasons.
A devastating plane crash shatters a village and captures the attention of the world.
It was one of the most significant terrorist attacks in history.
The mystery is finally cracked by a piece of debris smaller than a fingertip. October the 26th, 1988, near Düsseldorf. For weeks, German police have been following a group of suspected terrorists around the ancient town of Neuss. Today, they'll make their move.
Jetzt! BK! BK!
In the trunk of their car, police make an unusual discovery.
Berühren Sie es nicht.
Police raid apartments used by the two men. They find a number of blank passports and a small arsenal of weapons. When police closely examine the radio recovered from their car, they find it's wired with explosives.
Those devices used a combination of an improvised barometric device and a timer, a short delay timer. All these devices were, in fact, supposed to go onto an aircraft.
A barometric timer is set off by changes in altitude. It's triggered when it reaches a certain height. since that guarantees a plane will be in the air when the bomb goes off. It's a favorite device for those targeting passenger jets. The two men arrested in Germany work for a well-known terrorist organization, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine.
Leader of the PFL-PGC, Ahmed Jibril, made a speech in Libya in 1986, and one of the things he said was that until there's peace in the Middle East, there would be no safety for anyone traveling on an American or an Israeli airliner.
Hafez Dalkamouni is shipping weapons to Syria and Lebanon. Marwan Krishat is a notorious bomb maker, responsible for bringing down at least one passenger jet. It's just a couple of months until the busy Christmas travel season. With the two men under arrest, German police have made commercial aviation a little safer. Two months later, Pan Am Flight 103 is on its way from London to New York. The jet has just taken off from Heathrow Airport. There are 259 people on board. Most of the passengers are American. Charles McKee actually works for the US government. Khalid Jafar lives in Detroit and is returning home from a trip to Lebanon and Germany. The first part of the trip to the United States takes the plane northwest up over Scotland. The so-called Daventry departure is one of 6 preset routes that jets follow on their way out of Heathrow. Lockerbie is one of several small towns the plane will pass over. Tucked away in the Scottish lowlands, residents are barely aware that they live below a busy aerial highway. Pan Am calls this 747 Clipper Made of the Seas. As it levels off at 31,000 feet, the crew gets in touch with air traffic control.
Good evening, Scottish. Clipper 103, we are level at 310.
103, you are identified.
Captain James McQuarrie is 55 years old. Like many passengers on this pre-holiday flight, he's heading home. Five miles below, the people of Lockerbie prepare for Christmas. Michael Gordon is chatting with a friend when a strange rumbling noise fills his house.
Hang on, there's something odd outside here.
The weather that night was a bit wild. There was a fairly strong westerly wind, and I could hear it hitting the window in front of me. From my window I can see Lockerbie because my house sits up on the hill. And I heard this noise which was above the noise of the wind, and the noise sounded like thunder. And the noise got louder and louder. And I could hear the noise then got to the stage of being similar to a jet fighter. And at that time, we had a lot of military aircraft passing through the area. However, I saw dark objects, dark things falling from the sky. Against the lights of Lockerbie, I could see these black objects coming down. And then, from my right, quite high on my right, I could see a long, thin, black object which had a fire on the upper surface coming in. And it was making its way towards Lockerbie. When it hit, there was the most horrendous explosion, and I could hear the tiles on the roof of my house lifting.
Hello? Hello?
When the explosion took place, the telephone line stopped functioning.
Lockerbie is burning. Enormous flames reach into the night sky. Michael Gordon races to the neighborhood that is hardest hit.
The street was on fire, the lawns were on fire, and houses were on fire. And it was difficult to go without finding my trousers burning and my shoes burning. You had to jump about quite a bit because everything was on fire. But I remember at that point finding an airline ticket, and it was perfectly intact. There's no damage by fire or fuel or contamination of any sort. And the airline ticket said London Heathrow to JFK.
Somehow, Pan Am Flight 103 has fallen from the sky and smashed into Lockerbie, Scotland. In the daylight, the full horror of the crash of Pan Am Flight 103 is obvious. Several houses on the ground have simply vanished, vaporized when the plane smashed into them. An enormous crater is torn through the southern edge of the town. 1,500 tons of rock and earth have been blasted out of the ground. 11 people from Lockerbie are dead, along with all 259 people who were on board.
As far as I know, I've lost my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and their house is just a 30-foot crater.
In the ruins of their homes, they search for the bodies of the aircraft's passengers. Such a catastrophe, so sudden, so great a shock for a quiet town.
It looked like a scene out of hell. This whole road was ablaze.
Didn't know what it was, and then we rushed outside and just all this debris coming down.
Air crash investigators have arrived in Lockerbie within hours of the crash. Mick Charles is the lead inspector for the British Air Accidents Investigation Branch, the AAIB.
One of the first sites we went to was the site of the crater. That was still smelling very much of aviation fuel for a start, and scattered all around were bits of debris and in some cases human tissue as well.
Charles quickly gathers his team to begin looking for clues.
It was all heaving, it was happening, there were loads of people, and it was to some extent chaos.
You'll be organised into groups, headed by an AAIB inspector. Does anyone have any questions? The sooner we start, the better.
More than 1,000 police officers and 600 members of the military pour into Lockerbie.
You always have this sense of wanting to get to grips with what it is. It was quite clear that whatever it was colossal.
Any debris that's found is put into clear plastic bags and left to be collected later. Dark bags are used to store human remains. It's just days before Christmas, but the holiday spirit has been shattered.
At the start of the investigation, what we were doing was finding out which bits of the aeroplane were where, actually finding all the aeroplane.
The sheer scale of the disaster is difficult to comprehend.
Chris, the RAF have offered us a helicopter. Can we use it?
Absolutely.
With so much wreckage being found, investigators need to get a bird's-eye view and locate the largest fields of debris.
The maps of that area were a very short supply, and we ran out of them very quickly, so we had to use black and white photocopies initially.
Investigators bring local police officer Michael Gordon with them to help in the search.
The intention was for me to be able to identify geographical landmarks and identify parts of the aircraft.
They soon get a better sense of their enormous task.
When we were in the helicopter, we could see that the wreckage came out in a cone shape, emanating from Lockerbie, and the cone shape got wider and wider the further from Lockerbie.
The principal feature that I was looking for was to try to establish some pattern of the wreckage which would basically help me direct the ground investigators.
They're shocked by what they find. Pieces of the plane are scattered over an area larger than all of London. More than 2,000 square kilometers. It quickly becomes clear that Pan Am 103 was coming apart long before it hit the ground.
Normally, you're seeing a fairly contained accident site. In Lockerbie, it was nothing like that because initially the police had identified half a dozen discrete sites.
A 747 is made up of more than 6 million parts. In the mangled remains of the jet, investigators need to find the one that will tell them what happened. The plane's cockpit is eerie proof that Pan Am Flight 103 broke apart in mid-air. Severed from the rest of the plane, it's 4 kilometers east of the city.
When looking at the cockpit, I was looking at the roof of it, and the windows were intact. The actual nose part had cracked open, but it was as if it had been chopped off just aft of the cabin, and you could walk round the back and look into the cabin section from the back.
Inside the cockpit, investigators note the positions of various switches and controls. They find the autopilot is on and the oxygen masks are still stowed.
This is a fairly standard procedure which we would do in any such investigation. The end result was that there was nothing at all untoward found in the cockpit. Everything was consistent with cruising flight.
Soon, investigators discover why the damage to Lockerbie was so devastating.
The main wreckage which fell on the town of Lockerbie was the wing, which is basically both the left and right wing, complete with the structure in the middle.
Investigators estimate that the plane was loaded down with 90,000 kilograms of fuel.
$150 tons, descending essentially vertically at up to about 500 knots speed, and there's an awful lot of energy in that. And that's what created the crater.
To find the cause of the crash, however, investigators will have to look elsewhere. They need to examine wreckage found south of Lockerbie. These pieces would have come off at the beginning of the disaster. While the painstaking work of collecting evidence continues, investigators comb through maintenance records. Those records raise concerns with the plane's age. Clipper Made of the Seas was the 15th 747 ever built by Boeing.
This was one of the older Boeing 747s. It was built in 1970, so it was 18 years old and had got something like 75,000 flying hours.
Perhaps some critical part of the plane had given way as it flew over Lockerbie.
The two obvious possibilities were that it was a straightforward structural failure, or it was possibly the result of sabotage.
McCharles, Tom Thurman, FBI.
Good to meet you, Tom. I was expecting you.
While the investigators are searching for possible answers in the history of the plane, the second possibility, sabotage, is also being pursued.
We were there to provide technical expertise to the Scottish investigators into explosives and explosive damage, and that the telltale sign that it could be a bomb.
Just 3.5 years before Lockerbie, a bomb had brought down an Air India jet just off the Irish coast. In that case, the plane and vital clues sunk deep to the bottom of the sea. But the wreckage of the Pan Am flight litters the Scottish lowlands. If it was a bomb, there's a chance that important evidence can be found.
What kind of logistical effort is it going to take to find everything, and I mean everything, and bring it back to a location to be able to look at it and come to some conclusion. With the fragments that we found on the ground, we were picking those up. We were looking for blast damage on these pieces of metal. But until we found something that said it was a bomb, physical evidence, it was an accident.
We were very mindful of the fact that there was plenty of reports in the media about it being a terrorist act. It's a question of what evidence you find and which direction to take the investigation.
In the first 24 hours, 4 separate groups have claimed responsibility for bombing the jet.
The guardians of the Islamic Revolution are undertaking this heroic execution in revenge for the blowing of the Iranian airplane by America.
Dick Marquis is an expert on international terrorism working for the American FBI.
A number of organizations either claim credit for or were given credit, including groups from Iran and Palestinian groups, and one Irish group also claimed responsibility for it.
6 months earlier, the US Navy shot down an Iranian passenger jet. 290 people were killed. The American government claims it was an accident, but Iran has vowed revenge. Other threats had been made in the weeks before the crash. The American embassy in Helsinki received an anonymous warning that a bomb would soon be put on a Pan Am flight leaving from Frankfurt. Officials eventually discounted the threat, but a notice was posted in American embassies. Many of the passengers who boarded Flight 103 had come from Frankfurt on a connecting flight.
Right, excellent work, everyone.
Then, on Christmas Eve, just 3 days after the crash of the plane, the investigation gets an enormous break.
Everyone clear on what they need to do this evening? Terrific. Tom, can I see you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You'd like to put your gloves on, I think, for this.
Mick Charles had a bag and had a piece of metal in the bag.
What is it?
We think it's a piece of luggage rail. It helps guide the cargo containers into place.
Inspectors in the field discovered items which they recognized as being not part of a normal failure sequence that you would expect if it had been a structural failure.
Nick, this has been very near an explosion.
That's what we thought as well.
Small marks have been made on the metal. Craters that are the telltale signs of a bomb.
The hot gases of the combustion process of the explosion hits a piece of particularly metal, and it puts pits in it like you would take a blowtorch. Take a blowtorch and you have a piece of metal and you just barely touch the piece of metal, it'll make a little hole down into the metal.
It's the first piece of wreckage from outside the town of Lockerbie to show any signs of being damaged by fire.
Where did you find it?
I'll take you out in the morning.
The Scottish countryside is about to become the largest crime scene in the world. It's Christmas Day, 1988. But in Lockerbie, Scotland, people are still reeling from a devastating plane crash.
Christmas is just going to be remembered for all the wrong reasons.
It's just tragic for everybody. We'll never believe in God again.
For air crash investigators, December the 25th is treated like any other day at work.
That was, in my mind, the most distinguishing characteristic of Lockerbie. And although it was over Christmas, you just stay there and you do what you have to do.
Investigators converge on a farmer's field outside of the town.
Over here! Keep yelling! We can't see you!
The weather had turned horrible, foggy, kind of misting rain. You couldn't see 10 feet in front of you. And there was debris literally all over the place.
Another piece of the baggage compartment rail has been found.
That looks like the piece that you showed me last night. About 20 inches is just gone.
And lo and behold, that was the other piece of the skid rail that was literally sticking in the ground. We made some photographs. You know, it was a Christmas present that we could go out there to this farm and find the other piece of metal that had been blown off. No, we were not fascinated. We were pumped.
This piece also has pits and craters in it, indications that it was close to an explosion. The pieces of wreckage are part of the southern debris field, and near the beginning of it. The placement suggests they were some of the first parts to break off the plane.
We were very suspicious that it was a bomb which had caused this destruction, but we were not prepared to say anything until we'd had those details confirmed by the forensic experts.
A British forensics lab has made the critical link. Traces of 2 chemicals used to make plastic explosive are found on the debris recovered near Lockerbie. On December the 28th, just 7 days after the crash, investigators have their proof and announce it to the world.
It has been established that 2 parts of the metal luggage pallet's framework show conclusive evidence of a detonating high explosive.
The crash of Pan Am Flight 103 is now officially a crime.
Our mandate with regard to Lockerbie was find out who did it and prove it. Because what we wanted to do is bring someone to justice and make them answer for killing 270 people.
With terrorism now the official cause, rumors start to fly. Speculation eventually focuses on 2 passengers. Charles McKee works for the US Department of Defense.
Charles McGee was returning from the Middle East, where he was working trying to free hostages that had been taken in the Middle East during the mid-1980s.
The hostages McKee was trying to release were being held in Lebanon. In 1988, a civil war was tearing that country apart. Americans were seen as useful bargaining chips.
There was speculation in the media that Charles McKee may have been targeted by terrorists because of the work he was doing.
McKee isn't the only passenger who captures the attention of the media. Khalid Jafar was 20 years old and was returning home to the US after a trip to Lebanon and Germany.
Perhaps a bomb was carried on board an aircraft by someone who may have had a Middle Eastern-sounding name. Jafar was examined as a potential suspect.
The story makes it as far as the US Congress, but no proof can be found that Jafar was involved or that McKee was the intended target.
We looked at every single passenger on the plane to see if, in fact, someone could have given them a bomb. The evidence proved that not to be the case.
In Lockerbie, investigators from the AAIB continue to sort through the tons of tangled metal.
We could, I suppose in theory, have just stopped, but we thought, we know it's a bomb, we have all of the wreckage over land, it's an ideal opportunity to recover it all and to understand it properly. We knew it was a small bomb, but we didn't understand the explosive processes.
Investigators are particularly interested in the hull of the aircraft. They move pieces of it to a military hangar just outside of town.
It was a 5-acre shed which was long enough that we could plan to lay the fuselage out, opened up like a clamshell, using the bottom center line of the aircraft as our sort of core line.
The fuselage of an airplane is bolted to a series of frames, and each frame is numbered based on how far it is from the front of the aircraft.
Before we laid out the wreckage two-dimensionally, we put lines and tapes on the floor to give us a grid, and this grid related to the geometry of the aeroplane.
They begin to reassemble it like an enormous jigsaw puzzle.
A lot of the structure bears characteristic shapes that you can say immediately, this looks like a door frame. A lot of stuff, it has unique part numbers, which can help you identify small and fairly, what you would call unidentifiable bits.
As the work continues, more pieces of the plane are found that show telltale blast damage.
Right, the location is 817204.
When they gather the pieces that are near the front of the plane, investigators make a chilling discovery. This is where the bomb had started ripping the plane apart.
It became apparent that there was an area of the aircraft in which the damage was really quite different from the rest.
The fuselage in this section isn't torn, but blasted to pieces.
The fuselage structure in the area of the explosion was blackened and sooted. The fractures were very rapid and jagged, unlike normal tearing fractures of skin.
Frame 700 runs right round here.
Not only do investigators now know it was a bomb, they know where it blasted through the fuselage of the plane. Just outside of the forward luggage compartment. Peter Claydon is responsible for reassembling the cargo containers that were directly behind the shatter zone.
The main goal I had was to identify the baggage container that contained the device. We had maybe 20 baggage containers of a similar construction. So it's like having 20 jigsaw puzzles all mixed up.
The investigators concentrate on the cargo containers that were found in the southern debris field, wreckage that was ejected shortly after the explosion.
We concluded that there were only two on the aircraft, one made of aluminium, one made of fiberglass, and they had been adjacent to each other on the aircraft, and they were the only two that exhibited evidence of an improvised explosive device having detonated.
The metal container, AVE 4041, is of particular interest. It was resting directly behind frame 700, where the blast damage is the worst.
The damage caused to the metal container was quite severe. The damage to the adjacent fiberglass container, I think you might call it collateral damage.
Investigators create a simple framework and attach the pieces of the real cargo container to it. As they do, it becomes clear. AVE 4041 carried the bomb that brought the plane down. Closely examining damage to the floor and the side of the container, investigators are also able to pinpoint the height of the bomb, where it was in the container when it exploded.
What that said to me was that the device was probably in a suitcase, and that suitcase was probably not on the floor of the container. It looked like it was one level up.
According to luggage records, it means that the bag containing the bomb had come from a connecting flight. While investigators are assembling a piece of the metal container, they discover a fragment of wreckage that doesn't belong.
When I was looking at it, I saw a little piece of debris trapped in one of the folds. So gently flexing this apart, it fell out. When I looked at it, I could see it was a fragment of a printed circuit board, an electronic circuit board.
Can you bring me a camera and an evidence bag, please? Let's get this to the lab.
I didn't know whether it was a bomb, part of the airplane really, or what. It could have been somebody's shaver, for all I know.
Eventually, forensic experts in Britain determined that the circuit board was a piece of a specific brand of radio. News of the discovery makes its way to Washington. It reaches Tom Thurman, who's returned to his office there.
And lo and behold, an identification was made into a Toshiba SF-16 radio. And ironically enough, the name on the side of that radio, just as a brand name, I guess, was called a bomb beat radio.
The radio cassette player had hidden the bomb. It's very similar to the one that was recovered by German police when they cracked the Palestinian terrorist cell 2 months before the bombing. Had German police somehow missed something? Had a bomb made here been used on the Pan Am flight?
When the bombing happened, one of the initial suspects certainly was the PFL-PGC cell in Germany. The intelligence told us that the PFL-PGC was probably responsible for this.
49 passengers who eventually boarded the Pan Am flight started their journey in the German city of Frankfurt. Their bags were placed onto Flight 103 in London. But the airline did not ensure the passengers who checked in the bags actually got onto the plane. Perhaps a bomb made in Germany had slipped through the cracks at Heathrow while the terrorist walked away.
We had to then, if that was the case, prove it.
As the investigation continues, there's a puzzling discovery. While made by the same company, the cassette player used in the Lockerbie bombing is slightly different from the one that was seized in Germany.
Both were contained in Toshiba radios, but one was a one-speaker model, and the one that blew up the Lockerbie plane was a two-speaker, more updated model radio.
The difference in the model of radio being used raises doubts. Perhaps the terrorists in Germany are not responsible.
You can look at the way that a device is put together and say, hey, I know who put this together because I've seen this before, and this is the way that this bomb builder puts a bomb together. They call it a bomber's signature.
Law enforcement officials need more clues to figure out who had built the bomb. Perhaps the suitcase it was packed in can provide those clues. Studying small pieces of wreckage, British forensic experts find that the suitcase was a hard-sided Samsonite 4000. Samsonite made only a few thousand of these suitcases and sold all of them in the Middle East. Several pieces of clothing have also been identified that were very close to the explosion, likely in the suitcase that concealed the bomb. Most of these clothes were made by a single manufacturer and were only sold on the tiny island of Malta.
So Malta became the focus of the investigation because of the manufacture and eventually distribution of some of the clothing that was found at Lockerbie.
Investigators find the shop in Malta where the clothes were sold. The owner gives them another clue.
The key thing that he told us was the person had a Libyan accent, something we didn't really have evidence yet that tied Libya to the bombing.
It was just 2 weeks before the attack on the Pan Am flight. In 1988, Libya was reeling from a number of confrontations with the American military. Economic sanctions had been imposed. The country was isolated, and its leader, Muammar Gaddafi, aggressively anti-American. Perhaps the bombing of the Pan Am flight was an attack by Libya against the United States. Poring through baggage records for the Pan Am flight, police discover one piece of luggage that had been carried from Malta to Frankfurt earlier that day. Bag number B8849 had then been sent through to Britain's Heathrow Airport. Once there, it was placed on the second level of cargo container AVE 4041. It was the Samsonite case investigators now know carried the bomb.
More than a year after the crash, a new discovery in Lockerbie helps simplify the confusing series of clues. Forensic experts discover another circuit board from among the clothes that came from Malta.
It doesn't come from that circuit board that was in the SF-16 radio. And this circuit board is half the size of your thumbnail.
A photo of the circuit board is sent to Tom Thurman. He believes it could be a piece of the timer from the bomb.
I spent months literally looking through all of the files of the FBI on other examinations that we had conducted over many, many, many years.
The FBI has photos of timers used to detonate bombs around the world. But Thurman can't find any that match the piece found at Lockerbie.
Nope. Next.
After a period, I ran out of leads. And at that point, decided, okay, now we need to go outside the physical FBI laboratory.
Thurman eventually takes the photo of the circuit to the Central Intelligence Agency.
I called a contact of mine and I said, I need to bring something over for you to look at.
Sifting through reports on various bombings, Thurman finds a match.
Wait a second. That could be the same. Do you have this timer?
When Thurman closely examines the timer captured by the CIA, he's stunned.
Within a few minutes, literally, I started getting cold chills. And right now, as I talk about it, cold chills start on me, because I can still see that moment so vividly in my mind that I'm looking at that circuit track that's just like what I'm seeing in the photograph.
This is what we're looking for.
The timer the CIA has was seized in Africa a few years earlier. 2 Libyan men were trying to get it and several pounds of explosives past airport security. It's identical to the timer used to bring down Flight 103 and wouldn't be set off by changes in pressure like the barometric switch discovered in Germany. This device was set to go off at a certain time, not at a given altitude.
This is the timer. This is a long delay timer that brought down that aircraft. But now we want to know, okay, where'd this come from?
The Lockerbie bomb used a different timer and a different radio than the bomb found in Germany. Someone else was behind the destruction of the jet.
This was not made in somebody's home laboratory. This was a extremely professionally made timer.
While the criminal investigation becomes murkier, the accident investigation is becoming increasingly clear. The investigation eventually moves from Scotland to Farnborough, England. Well known for its aeronautics industry, the town is home to the AAIB. Several months after the crash of Pan Am Flight 103, investigators launch a massive endeavor. They begin to rebuild a 20 meters section of the fuselage from the ruined jet. They hope that it would give them information their two-dimensional reconstruction couldn't. They can see that the explosion tore a 1.5 by 5 meter hole in the side of the plane. Chris Prothero is a senior inspector of air accidents at the AAIB.
What was very difficult to understand was the fact that this area of direct damage was effectively a pinprick in relation to the size of the aircraft as a whole, and it was very difficult to understand how this pinprick of damage had resulted in such a comprehensive destruction of the aircraft.
The bomb that brought the plane down had less than 0.5 kilogram of explosive. Yet its destructive power was immense. Investigators want to learn more about how shockwaves behave inside a jet.
It's rather like a freeze frame on a video footage, if you can capture that point as the thing is coming apart, it tells you a great deal about the way it's coming apart.
What they discover is that the initial blast wave wasn't the only one to damage the plane. A large section of the ceiling of the aircraft has been pushed up with so much force that the rivets connecting it to the plane's frame popped. It wasn't torn apart, but blasted by a shockwave.
The other features that the 3D reconstruction allowed us to identify were areas of remote pressure damage on the crown skin and other areas where explosive shock had been channeled through the internal spaces in the aircraft.
The inside of a jet acts like an echo chamber, bouncing the shock waves of the bomb around. They gather strength until they encounter a weak spot in the skin. When they do, they blast through. The work in Farnborough is powerful proof of how destructive even a small bomb can be, and how vital it is to track the bombers down. Almost 2 years after the Lockerbie disaster, the criminal trail of evidence brings investigators to Zurich. The timer that detonated the bomb is traced to a Swiss company called Mebo. One of the owners of the company admits to building it.
The timer was given to the Libyan government. A total of 20 of them were made, all delivered to Libyan officials.
Early in the investigation, focus was directed at the Palestinian terrorist group in Germany. Now there's growing proof that they had nothing to do with the downing of Flight 103.
There were any number of suspects, and it wasn't until we kept putting everything in one pile, and the pile kept stacking up, and it spelled Libya.
Criminal investigators have linked the timer that detonated the bomb to Libya. They know that a Libyan bought the clothes that were in the suitcase. And they know that Libya has a recent history of military confrontation with America. All they need now is the bomber himself. In 1999, they finally have him. At the time of the disaster, al-Megrahi was an intelligence officer for the Libyan government. He's arrested and charged.
He was a high-ranking Libyan official. He certainly could have access to whatever he wanted. Our investigation determined that Megrahi also had a front company at Mebo. He had been there many times. He certainly knew each other. When you start to see all the connections and these things just start fitting together, it made it easier to accept our evidence.
In 2001, Scottish judges sentenced him to life for the murder of 270 people. 2 years later, the government of Libya officially accepts responsibility for the bombing and pays $2.7 billion to the families involved. Anger is also aimed at Pan Am for the role it played in the disaster. A Scottish inquiry points a finger at the company. The passenger who checked the bomb onto Flight 103 did not get on board. It's a fact that Pan Am could have discovered had it been following proper procedures.
One of the things we discovered when we looked into the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 was that there were several bags on that plane that did not correspond to passengers.
One of the changes that came about as a result of the Air India bombing was that airlines were forced to make sure no bag was put on a plane without a passenger accompanying it. It's called passenger baggage reconciliation. Without proper notification, Pan Am had stopped matching passengers and baggage at Heathrow Airport.
So that rule that said that all passengers and luggage have to be matched was not followed.
The company was eventually found guilty of willful misconduct. After the crash and the court ruling, Pan Am declared bankruptcy. 20 years after the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103, Its shattered fuselage still stands in Farnborough, England. Those pieces may soon be used to train investigators here and around the world. A critical aid in case terrorists strike again.
The enduring feeling I have as a result of Lockerbie is the tremendous level of cooperation we had from all the agencies. And considering that there were about 2,500 people with the military, the police, and so on involved in this, I think that's a great tribute.
Lockerbie was a rare occasion that we felt honored to be a part of, to help make this happen. You know, we played small roles, but everybody played small roles to make big contributions to an overall success.
In the town of Lockerbie, there's little evidence today of the horror that exploded from the sky 20 years ago. In a small church, near where the dying plane's cockpit landed, is a stark reminder of the toll of terror and the importance of bringing the guilty to justice. The first public demonstration of the world's most sophisticated passenger jet.
Okay, you're at 100 feet there.
100. The Airbus A320 is being introduced to the world.
Mesdames et messieurs, votre attention s'il vous plaît. L'Airbus A320 arrive.
That introduction turns into a fatal calamity.
30. Can't be.
30.
It could not possibly have come at a worse time for Airbus. The crash was a major embarrassment.
There's enormous pressure on investigators. If Airbus is to survive, they must find the answer to one crucial question.
Was it the pilot or was it the plane?
It's 2:30 in the afternoon on June the 26th, 1988. An unusual charter flight prepares to depart Basel-Mulhouse Airport in France, near the Swiss border.
NTIs?
Captain Michel Asseline is one of Air France's most distinguished pilots.
On.
Though only 44, he's the head of pilot training for the company's newest plane, the Airbus A320. It's only the third of its kind to roll off the assembly line. Captain Asseline flew this very aircraft from the factory in Toulouse just 2 days earlier.
I was in charge of the launching of the 320 in Air France. The company used me to promote the aircraft. The speeches to make, I was constantly on the television, on newspaper.
Air Charter 296 would like to roll, please.
Asseline's first officer, Pierre Mazière, is also a senior Air France pilot.
Air Charter 296.
He's invited 2 off-duty flight attendants to come along for the ride on this special flight. The aircraft is booked to perform a low-altitude flyover at a local air show. There are 130 people on board this A320, which is unusual for an air show demonstration flight. They have no luggage. For some, it's their first time on an airplane. There are even children, like 7-year-old Mariama Bari, unaccompanied by their parents. After the flyover, they will be taken on a sightseeing tour around Mont Blanc, the highest peak in Western Europe. Most got their tickets as promotional gifts from a local bank and newspaper. Jean-Marie Schreiber is a young reporter covering the launch of the new plane.
As a journalist, I was thrilled to be on the flight, to have a chance to see how people reacted inside the plane.
Another journalist aboard, Jean-Claude Boche, has been busy recording the event.
As I got on the plane, I thought, great, this is going to be an unforgettable experience. And it really was unforgettable.
The A320 is the first civil aircraft to use fly-by-wire, a cutting-edge technology that computerizes flight controls. The system had previously mainly been used by the military.
On the fly-by-wire system, the pilot essentially flies the computer, and the computer flies the aircraft.
Fly-by-wire alters the relationship between pilot and plane. It gives computers the ability to override human inputs to prevent pilot error. The A320's flight computer won't let its human operators do anything it determines to be dangerous. Airbus has become the first civil aircraft maker to embrace this technology. It hopes this will give it an edge over its longtime American rival, Boeing. In its first public presentation, Airbus has a lot on the line.
Okay, tell me what you want in terms of speed and altitude.
Okay, then take off, right turn. We go nice and easy to find out things.
We tried to demonstrate the capability of this aircraft. To say we wanted to show off, not exactly. We wanted to make a good job, and we were sure to make a good job.
Once we identify the airfield, we extend flaps to 3. We'll do the flyover at 100, landing gear out, and you just leave it up to me. I'll give it Alpha Max. Done it 20 times.
Okay.
Captain Asseline is planning a breathtaking maneuver. A low-altitude, nose-high flyby at Alpha Max. This is the slowest a plane can fly without stalling.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome aboard this Airbus A320, which was put into service just 2 days ago. We will soon be taking off for a short sightseeing flight, which will start from the Algiers Flying Club, and then we'll be flying around Mont Blanc. I wish you a very pleasant flight. That's done.
ACF 296Q, clear for takeoff. Runway 16.
We're rolling.
Take off. Go.
Parameters normal. 100. 100? It's already requesting climb. You see that?
Yes, that happens. I know the bug.
V1. Rotate. Gear up, flaps 1. After take-up checklist completed.
It's only a 5-minute flight to Habsheim Airfield, where the airshow is being held. For this sleepy Alsatian town, the airshow is the highlight of the summer.
The airshow drew more than 5,000 people. There was significant interest from the public.
The airfield is so small, its coordinates aren't stored in the plane's navigation database, so the pilots must find it by sight.
You're at 8 nautical miles. You'll soon see it. There's the highway.
We leave the highway to the left, don't we? No, to the right of the highway.
It's slightly to the right of the highway.
There's the airfield. You've got it, have you?
The pilots have spotted the airfield late. They will have to hurry to descend to the planned altitude for the flyover at the airshow. A crowd is forming at the runway.
Air Charter 296, good afternoon.
Abchime, hello. We are coming into view of the airfield for the flyover.
Yes, I can see you. You're cleared. The sky is clear.
Gear down. Okay, we're going in for low altitude, low speed flyover. 296.
Roger.
Flaps 2.
Quebec November Hotel, I'm saying Fox Echo 984.
Okay. 984. Put in 984. Flaps 3. Flaps 3. That's the airfield. You confirm? Affirmative.
Flight 296 makes a gentle turn to line up with the runway. The pilots must now lose more altitude and speed to get into position for the flyover.
200. 200. Mesdames et messieurs, votre attention s'il vous plaît. L'Airbus A320 arrive.
Okay, you're at 100 feet there.
100.
Watch it.
100.
Watch it.
The aircraft is now at the planned altitude. For Asseline, this will be the most delicate part of the maneuver. He must keep the plane in a stable position with the nose up, but not too high.
I looked at the ground and said, look, he's not high enough, because you could see the grass right out your window.
Okay, I'm okay there. Disconnect auto throttle.
He disables one of the plane's safety features so that the computer won't speed up the slow-moving plane. Only now, Captain Asseline sees a danger that threatens the lives of everyone on board. The A320's low-speed flyover at the Habsheim airfield is suddenly not going according to plan. There's a forest in the path of Captain Asseline's plane.
30.
Take off, go around power.
He selects the highest thrust setting and pulls back on the controls, expecting the aircraft to pull up. But the plane keeps dropping.
Get beat!
J'ai commencé à voir par le hublot des branches d'arbres.
I started to see through the window tree branches. I was astonished. You can imagine being on a trail in a large vehicle, a bumpy trail, driving at 80 or 100 kilometers an hour, and you're shaking from all sides. It was like that. I was saying to myself, the plane has to stay in one piece, because if the plane stays whole, we'll be okay. If it breaks up, we're done for.
S'il casse, c'est fichu.
Still full of fuel, the right wing of the jet is sheared off. The fuel ignites immediately on impact.
We stopped very quickly. And on the ground, I broke my seat, just because I was holding very firmly. I broke my seat, and I could see a lot of flames all over. But about 20 meters high flames around the cockpit, smoke coming from everywhere.
The first officer is badly injured.
And he has a lot of blood. And even with the full harness, he hit something in front of him.
What the hell have you done?
I don't know. I don't understand.
There was a moment of silence when the plane finally stopped.
Incredibly, the fuselage is still in one piece. Everyone has survived the impact, but they're not out of danger yet.
So I lean to the right, and I see red flames. The windows were red. And I think, we held together, but we're going to burn to death.
Then we heard somebody say, "Get out, there's a fire."
Sortez, sortez, il y a le feu.
Evacuate the aircraft. Hurry, I'll deal with him.
Only 2 exits can be used for evacuation. The rest are engulfed in flames. But thick branches block one of the doors, making evacuation difficult. In the chaos of the cabin, some passengers struggle with their seatbelts. Marie-Françoise Froche is one of the last passengers to leave her seat. She comes across Mariama Bari, who's trapped in her seat.
Mariama
Bari, she was 7, 8. After the accident, people pushing toward the exit pushed on the backs of the seats, the backs that folded over her, and then she was trapped by her seatbelt. No one saw her. She was forgotten.
But it's too late. Both are overcome by smoke before they can get off the plane. In the cockpit, Captain Asselinean struggles to get his injured first officer out of the burning aircraft.
I took him from his seat and belt him, carried I don't know how, and I put it in a slide. When the passenger, all of them, the last one, was out of the plane, I saw my crew. They told me, Captain, they are all out. I couldn't believe it.
But the crew is wrong. Not all the passengers have made it out. Marie-Françoise Froche, Mariama Bari, and another young boy are dead. In addition to the tragic loss of life, the accident is a PR disaster for Airbus.
The crash could not possibly have come at a worse time for Airbus. They were trying out this new concept, which they had touted very widely as a new level of safety for civil flight. And here's a pilot going and crashing one. For those who actually saw the accident, and it was broadcast on the news media throughout the world the same evening that it happened, there was amazement. The crash was a major embarrassment.
Investigators from France's Accident Investigation Bureau are on the scene of the crash within hours. They need to know why this demonstration flight ended in disaster. They recover the plane's data and voice recorders. Claude Béchet will head the investigation.
Was it the pilot or was it the plane? We need to know.
Like the pilots of Flight 296, he also works for Air France as an airline captain.
Let's get to work.
Which is unusual for a state investigator.
At that time, I was still an airline pilot, and I was in New York when the accident happened, and they sent me a telegram to ask me to come back to Paris as soon as possible.
Apart from the flight recorders, investigators have a remarkable piece of evidence to consider. A high-quality video of the accident has been recorded by a French cameraman.
It was the first time we had a video of an accident, you know. Normally, an accident happens in the middle of nowhere. Nobody is there with a camera to film it.
The tape clearly shows the plane flying right at the trees at the end of the runway. It doesn't seem to be climbing at all. The cockpit voice recorder offers a confounding clue.
Take off, go run power.
30. 30.
Get me!
It's clear the crew had no idea there was an obstacle at the end of the runway. Investigators are puzzled. How could a forest take a pilot by surprise? Béchet brings Captain Asselinean in for questioning about the flyover at Hapsheim. They need to know what his plan was.
My intention
was to carry out a flyover at slow speed.
As a qualified A320 pilot, Claude Béchet is familiar with the plane's capabilities.
Over the airstrip, and we go to Alpha Max.
Very good.
He sees nothing wrong with Captain Asseline's plan.
It was not bad. Making a slow pass was well planned. And he seemed to me to be very open and very ready to help to work with the investigation commission.
Investigators turned their attention to how Air France prepared the flight crew for the airshow. They discover a memo setting out the rules for all airshow flights. What draws the attention of investigators is the minimum altitude Air France had selected for airshow flyovers: 100 feet. It was in violation of national regulations.
He should have been at 500 feet, as a matter of fact. But there had at that time a tendency for pilots who were making air shows like that to go a little bit lower and sometimes much lower.
Chief Investigator Claude Béchet now wonders if there were any other mistakes in the planning of the flight. He soon learns that Air France's flight division didn't start drawing up a flight plan for the demonstration until less than 48 hours before the airshow. An Air France employee had prepared maps of the airfield for the crew of Flight 296. Investigators find a serious problem. The forest around Habsheim Airfield did not show up on the photocopies. The employee who had put together the flight package didn't have an opportunity to discuss it with the crew.
You were using a navigation chart?
While questioning Asseline, Béchet discovers that the pilots were also given little time to prepare.
Happened then. Here's the flight package. Thanks.
That's highly unusual for an airshow.
My co-pilot told me, okay, we make a flight around Mont Blanc, and then we have to make 2 low pass over a small airport, Habsheim. Told me there is nothing special. So for me, it was a normal flight, a normal day.
That preparation had not been complete, and there had been no briefing of the crew by the staff.
Investigators then make an intriguing discovery at the crash site. They measure the height of the trees hit by Flight 296. They discover the average height of the forest to be only 40 feet. This poses an urgent question. How could an Airbus that was supposed to be flying at 100 feet hit trees less than half that height? It is clear to investigators that Flight 296 fatally deviated from its original flight plan, losing altitude before plunging into a forest. But only the black box data can help them understand how and why this had happened. Information from the A320's flight data recorder is recovered within hours of the crash. The device records information about 200 aircraft functions. It paints a detailed picture of how Flight 296 was operating in the final minutes of its journey.
Can be! We could reconstruct the entire accident. We could live with the crew as the accident was happening.
Investigators make 2 striking observations from the data. The first is that Flight 296 suffered no mechanical breakdowns. The second is that the A320 followed a very different flight path than the one Captain Asseline had planned. Instead of maintaining a stable airspeed and altitude, Flight 296 had slowed down and lost altitude as it performed the flyover. As the A320 crossed the Habsheim airfield, its speed dropped to only 112 knots. That's about as slow as an A320 can fly. The plane's deceleration was so dramatic, it was even visible on the video. Michel Asselineau was one of Air France's top pilots. Claude Béchet is hard-pressed to understand how he could have mishandled such a high-profile flight. Pressed further, Asselineau explains how the trouble started.
You were using a navigation chart?
Yes, we had some difficulty locating the airfield. We leave the highway to the left, don't we? No, to the right of the highway. It's slightly to the right of the highway. There's the airfield. You've got it, have you?
They spotted the airfield too late. So when they did, they reduced the power and they descended.
So they rushed their descent in order to get into position for the flyover.
And they were still slowing down when they reached the airfield.
That's the airfield. You confirm? Affirmative.
But then another problem emerged. The spectators were lined up on a different runway from the one the crew was heading for. The crew of Air France Flight 296 is ill-prepared for their demonstration flight. In planning for the airshow, Air France only provided the crew with information for runway 2, Habsheim's only paved airstrip. But Captain Asselineau sees the crowds aligned on a much shorter, adjacent grass field.
I was expecting a normal runway. At the latest moment, I saw that it was a grass runway.
Captain Asselineau lined up with the grass strip.
I had no idea that at the end of the runway was a forest. For me, it was bushes only or something.
Okay, you're at 100 feet there. Watch it, watch it.
Because they had to rush their descent, by the time Flight 296 got to the airfield, it was flying too fast. To lose speed, Captain Asselineau kept the thrust on its lowest power setting, well below the setting pilots normally use for Alpha Max flight. But another serious problem was developing. The aircraft had dropped below 100 feet and was continuing to fall. And the crew didn't seem to notice.
I'm okay there. Disconnect auto throttle.
In a matter of seconds, the altitude had fallen to only 30 feet.
What was extremely clear is that airplane was flying at approximately 30 feet above the ground. Regardless of any other data, this data was extremely important.
Take off, go around power.
No airplane of that size or of any other size should make a flight path that low.
The data is clear. You were at 30 feet, not 100.
I believed I was at 100 feet.
Claude Béchet is still uncertain how the A320 ended up so dangerously close to the ground. Captain Asselineau insists his instruments failed him.
Flaps 2.
Quebec November Hotel, I've seen Fox Echo 984.
Okay. 984.
Captain Asselineau was relying on his barometric altimeter. It uses air pressure to measure the plane's distance from the ground. It had to be set to local atmospheric pressure to be accurate.
Quebec November Hotel, I've seen Fox Echo 984.
Okay. 984, put in 9.
The cockpit recorder proves that the tower provided the pressure reading and the crew set their instrument. But Asselineau insists the altimeter was giving him a false reading.
I tell you, the altimeter said the plane was at 100 feet.
Michel Asselineau stated that the barometric altimeter was, in fact, to be precise, 67 feet out. And that is something that he claims led him to be flying at 30 feet instead of at 100 feet.
Investigators are skeptical. Asselineau had more than one instrument to give him altitude information. The A320 has a second altimeter that uses radio waves to calculate the plane's distance from the ground. That altimeter displays the altitude on a digital display. But Captain Asseline claims it was difficult to read.
We could not use the radio altimeter because this radio altimeter is digital and nobody can fly by reading numbers. I tried that later on a simulator. I never succeeded to do it.
But the radio altimeter has another way of alerting pilots.
I'm okay there.
A digital voice call-out.
Disconnect auto throttle.
But Asseline claims he and his first officer, Pierre Mazière, could not hear it.
Some people say, but you could have heard the radio altimeter saying 30, 30, 50, 40, 30. No, because at that time this aircraft was very, very noisy. And we have the headsets. And we have demonstrated at that time that the radio altimeter warnings or the radio altimeter call-outs, they were not going through the headset.
Despite Asseline's defense, investigators are certain that the crew of Flight 296 mishandled a risky maneuver. Bechet has more questions for Captain Asseline.
What did you do when you saw the trees?
I did what any pilot would do. I tried to climb over them.
Investigators learn that in the final moments before the crash,
30. Pick up, go run power.
Captain Asseline applied full throttle.
When I was waiting for the engine to spool up, that I realized in front of me there were trees, and I was waiting.
But he claims the engines did not respond. And when they finally kicked in, it was too late.
I tell you, the engines did not come on when I gave it full throttle.
Captain Asseline's testimony raises a troubling prospect. If there was a prolonged delay in engine response, it could indicate a critical problem with the A320's turbojets. Captain Asseline is convinced the engines didn't respond quickly enough in the final seconds of the flight. He makes it his mission to prove it. He uncovers an Airbus document warning of a defect on the A320. It says the plane's engine speed could stagnate at low altitude, a condition caused by poor airflow. When this occurs, the engine cannot accelerate. But investigators can find no evidence of such a failure in any of the data from the plane.
30. Pick up, go run power.
In the 5 seconds after Captain Asseline applied full power on the thrust levers, the A320's twin engines had begun to spool up. They reached 84% thrust, close to full power, just before the plane hit the trees.
When you put from idle to full power, you have the impression that nothing happens for a few seconds, and then the power comes. But that was normal, exactly as predicted by the certification.
Investigators are increasingly certain the engines on Flight 296 didn't fail. They find a novel way to verify the data. Video of the crash picked up the distinctive sound of the A320's engines accelerating. By studying that sound, engineers can determine how much power the engines were generating in the final seconds before the crash.
We were able to compare the RPM of the engines from that film and from the flight data recorder. There was nothing wrong with the engines, any of the two engines.
Why?
Chief Investigator Claude Bechet has a new headache. Captain Asseline is convinced there is a conspiracy against him. He cuts off all cooperation with the investigation.
Very well.
Investigation committee, I tried to cooperate with them, but I began to be suspicious. And the press, each week, the aircraft is good, the aircraft has nothing, pilot error, pilot error, pilot error. All that was a big, big, big cover-up, my opinion.
Captain Asseline begins a campaign to challenge the French investigation. He appears on British television to make a dramatic assertion.
When I pull the stick to up position, the flight controls, the elevator control go to down position. So on any aircraft, if you ask up, following the order of the pilots, the elevator control goes to up, and not that on that one, it went to down. Why? That will be the good question.
His accusations go to the heart of doubts about the aircraft. That Airbus fly-by-wire system had given the A320's computers too much control. Asseline's claim that the plane didn't follow his instructions is supported by data from the plane's flight recorder. The black box recorded every movement of the pilot's side stick controller. It does show that seconds before the crash, Captain Asseline pulled it back to get the plane's nose up. Investigators compare it with what the plane did in response. They make a perplexing discovery.
He's telling the truth. The elevator moved down.
In the final seconds before the accident, the pilots had desperately tried to pull up. The side stick controls the plane's elevator. Pulling back on it should raise the elevator and pitch the plane upwards. 30. But that's not what happened on this flight.
One of the strange things about the crash flight, which became apparent when the digital flight recorder was analysed, was that during the last few seconds prior to contact with the trees, the pilot was dragging back on the stick as hard as he could, but the flight surfaces were moving into a position to put the nose down.
Captain Asseline believes the plane's descent triggered an automatic response by the flight computers. Asseline inadvertently brought his plane to within 30 feet of the ground with his landing gear down and his flaps extended. Investigators now wonder if the plane's computer determined that Asseline was landing and initiated the necessary steps to accomplish that.
As the plane leveled up with the airfield, it overflew a little copse of trees which took the radar altitude momentarily below 30 feet. That would have been sufficient to trigger the flight control system to enter landing mode.
It's possible that in spite of what Captain Asseline was commanding the plane to do, the computer brought the plane's nose down for landing. Investigators must try to determine whether the A320 overrode its pilot at a critical moment. They analyze the data from the flight recorder.
Stop it there.
But to their disappointment...
So was the plane in landing mode or not?
The flight data recorder can't confirm if the plane went into landing mode. The A320 systems are so advanced that the recorder can't track all of the plane's functions. Investigator Claude Béchet comes up with another way to find out. He replicates Asseline's approach to the Habsheim airfield to see how the A320 responds.
Okay, let's start the descent. Power to flight idle. Now put it into Alpha Max. That's it. Gently.
I replayed the accident, but on the longest runway in Toulouse.
Altitude, 40 feet, 35 feet.
We replayed the accident exactly what it was.
Béchet's plan is to descend to 30 feet, as Asseline's A320 did.
Now pull up slightly to level off. Hold it there.
Béchet wants to see if the flight computer puts the plane in landing mode.
Okay, now full thrust. Did you feel that? Alpha protection.
The test flight has triggered a nose-down response from the plane's computers, like the crash of Flight 296. But the plane hadn't gone into landing mode. Instead, the flyover had activated one of the A320's main safety features: stall protection. Due to a lack of airflow over the wings, flying slowly in a nose-high position can cause a plane to lose lift. The A320's computer has been programmed to bring the plane's nose down when it gets close to stalling.
This means that in theory, as long as the flight control system is in operation, the pilot cannot stall the plane.
Bechet concludes the flight computers did override Captain Asseline's command. But he believes that by doing so, it had prevented the plane from stalling and crashing just short of the tree line.
That airplane didn't stall and, let's say, landed on the trees.
The investigation into the crash at Habsheim is coming to an end. Claude Bechet prepares to deliver his verdict.
The conclusion of my report was that the airplane was too low, too slow, and with not enough power.
As far as Claude Bechet is concerned, the report is the final word on the Habsheim tragedy. The case, however, is far from over. The French justice system is moving towards a judgment of Captain Asseline. He is charged with involuntary homicide in the deaths of 3 passengers and faces the prospect of a long prison sentence. But Captain Asseline believes he has found evidence that will exonerate him. He is convinced there was a conspiracy to tamper with the plane's black boxes, to conceal problems with the A320's fly-by-wire technology.
There has been a cover-up with some funny recorders. That's the first point. The second point, they have been changing the content of the recorders.
It all begins, according to Asseline, at the crash site. An employee of France's Civil Aviation Authority is photographed carrying the A320's flight recorders from the scene. Those same black boxes are presented as evidence at Asseline's trial. But inexplicably, they look different.
I had a chance to see the black boxes held by the court. But when I see the state they're in, they're old boxes, full of scratches, dusty, with chipped paint. I think, wait, these can't be the boxes from the crash. The plane was new. They're not the right ones.
Captain Asseline hires a Swiss criminology institute to compare the 2 photographs. Its conclusion, they're not the same flight recorders. Captain Michel Asseline claims the black box data from his flight has been tampered with. But investigator Claude Bechet rejects the accusations as outrageous.
They were trying to prove that the tapes had been tampered with, which we could not understand because every recorder expert knew that it was physically impossible.
But there is one expert who believes the black boxes are suspicious. Ray Davis is a former head of flight recorder analysis at Britain's Air Accidents Investigation Branch. He has been hired by British television to review the French investigators' work.
It was a little bit of an eye-opener in a way, in that prior to reading the report, I had a totally different impression of the possible causes of this accident, whereas when I read the report, there were so many anomalies and questions raised by the report that my whole attitude towards the accident changed completely.
Davis discovers evidence that could vindicate Asseline. It raises questions about when the crew applied power to try to overfly the trees.
30.
Take off, go around power.
30.
While studying the black box data, Davis comes across a curious inconsistency. French investigators had synchronized the black boxes with a transcript of air traffic control communications. Davis examines the last conversation the pilots had with the tower before the crash.
984. Okay, 984, put in 984.
It was recorded by both air traffic control and the plane's own black box.
Quebec November Hotel at same box echo 984. Quebec November Hotel at same box echo 984.
Ray Davis discovers a time discrepancy between the two recordings, amounting to a loss of several seconds. According to the black box data, the aircraft was 5 seconds from impact with the trees when Captain Assouline commanded full thrust from the engines. But according to Ray Davis's analysis, this actually took place 4 seconds earlier. This 4-second gap dramatically changes the calculus of the accident. It's the difference between a normal delay in engine response and a serious malfunction.
Assouline claims that on this particular occasion, the delay was more than he expected. And depending upon which side of the argument you come down at as to whether or not the 4-second delay in the digital flight data recording was real or not, then, you know, he's either an idiot or you know, he's right.
The French justice system does not believe that Assouline is right. After multiple appeals, Michel Assouline is convicted of involuntary homicide and sentenced to 10 months in prison. Still, the controversy over the black boxes and the missing 4 seconds lingers on. It promises to forever cloud the results of Claude Béchet's investigation.
The public opinion thought probably, oh, well, there was so much at stake, you know. It was the future of all European aviation industry, which was at stake. So they managed to tamper the tapes so they could blame the pilot and not the airplane. But this is just impossible.
The investigation into the Habsheim accident made several recommendations. It calls for passengers to be banned on all demonstration flights. It also calls for better reconnaissance of airfields by flight crews. And they want airline procedures to be reviewed to ensure they conform with official regulations concerning altitude. Michel Assouline went on to a career as a teacher and inventor in the aviation industry. He continues to appeal his conviction and has devoted much of his life to clearing his name. The tragedy at Habsheim would have little impact on Airbus industry. The A320 would go on to become one of the most successful commercial aircraft in history, selling over 750 planes in its first 10 years. And fly-by-wire technology would be safely adopted by a new generation of passenger aircraft.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain. I hope you had a good...
Captain Stefan Rasmussen has been in love with flying all of his life.
I got my first idea of flying when I was a young boy.
After learning to fly in the Air Force, Rasmussen joined Scandinavian Airlines.
He seemed to be the one who really enjoyed his job.
On December the 27th, 1991, he's in command of a state-of-the-art DC-9. The flight will take him to the very edge of his abilities as his engines fail and his plane falls out of the sky.
I was in a nightmare.
Stockholm, Scandinavian 751, we are crashing into the ground now.
What caused the most baffling accident in Sweden's history is nothing investigators could have imagined. What they finally uncover will strain Rasmussen's lifelong relationship with airplanes to the breaking point.
I really felt that I didn't trust the aircraft.
Mayday, Mayday.
It's 2 days after Christmas. Stockholm Arlanda Airport is a mess of snow, slush, and ice. Passengers boarding a mid-morning Scandinavian Airlines flight to Copenhagen are finding the cabin very uncomfortable.
It was really warm inside the plane when we entered because there had been like heaters on during night. And I saw when the passengers embarked, they also wanted to take off like jackets and shoes, and because it was like a sauna.
Is it possible to turn the heat down now?
"34-year-old Ulf Sedermark has been with the airline for 4 years. He's the first officer on today's flight.
It was a light snowfall. Temperature was just below freezing and light winds. We were going to fly Stockholm to Copenhagen and then to Warsaw, back to Copenhagen and down to Barcelona that day. It would be quite a long working day.
Stefan Rasmussen has just finished an exterior check of the plane. The Danish pilot is in command this morning.
In those over 12, almost 13,000 hours I've been sitting in an aircraft, I always felt that I put the aircraft and back on like a rucksack. And when we took lift on the wings, we melted together.
The plane Rasmussen is strapping on today is a nearly new DC-9, easily identifiable by its 2 rear engines.
By now, everyone should know that door stays open.
Right.
Even in the days before terrorist threats, flying with the cockpit door open is unusual. It's just one way Rasmussen has endeared himself to the crews and passengers he flies with.
I always had my cabin door open because I found out that if we had the door open and they could see that there were a human being in there, they'd trust you.
For me, it felt good that the door was open. It just feels like you have a connection more than if the door is closed.
The winter weather has delayed this flight, but Rasmussen won't compromise safety for schedule.
Where are we now with the de-icing?
The wings aren't quite done. They've done the underside. Now they're doing the top.
Thank you.
Under Captain Rasmussen's instructions, the ground crew had already de-iced the plane once. Now they're giving it another pass.
And it took a while, but they had trouble getting rid of the snow on top of the wing. So we were slightly late for our pushback out to our runway.
For Captain Per Holmberg, this kind of delay is routine business. He flies DC-9s for the airline. A passenger this morning, he is scheduled to command another flight later that day.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain. I hope you had a good Christmas. We're just getting our wings cleared as we've had a bit of snow overnight. And when that's finished, we're ready for takeoff for some warmer weather. I handpicked the airline's best cabin crew to take care of you today. We all hope you have a nice flight.
Finally, Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751 is cleared to proceed. There are build-ups of snow that the crew must avoid on the way to the runway.
Would have been nice of them to clear the snow.
Oh, that would have made it too easy. Approaching holding point, runway 08.
Roger, Scandinavian 751. You are cleared for takeoff from runway 08.
Spoilers?
Armed.
Auto brake, takeoff and armed. Runway update performed. Checklist completed.
Set power.
Despite the winter conditions, the takeoff is routine.
V1, rotate.
Gear up.
Gear up selected.
When Wolfie reached out for the gear, I heard things which was different.
Just 25 seconds into the flight, as the plane is climbing, there is a problem.
When you hear things that are different from the normally, you get suspicious. There was a really big roar in the aircraft, almost like an explosion. Boom!
There was another banging noise that I just thought, what is that? I had never heard that before.
It's obvious the source of the noise is the right engine.
It sounds serious. I believe it's a compressor stall.
I took the right throttle and moved a little back, but there it really became strange because the engine performance increased when I reduced the throttle. It's like if you're sitting in your car and you're turning your wheel to the left and the car is driving to the right, you get confused.
We're not supposed to call into cockpit now. And then I thought, this is an emergency, I have to call the captain.
But Captain Rasmussen doesn't respond to the call. He's too busy trying to figure out what's going wrong with his plane.
I couldn't see anything on the instrument. They were quite stable and a quite normal range, no problem. But I could hear those roaring every second.
He searches for telltale signs of attack or structural failure.
And I looked up at the cabin pressure, because if you have a bomb or a freight door or anything which is ripped off, that'll give a decompression.
In the cabin, pressure levels are stable. But the crew has other concerns.
I saw the smoke and it smelled burnt.
What should we do about this?
Just 3,200 feet above the ground, the emergency escalates. The right engine quits.
When we have flown a little over 1 minute, the right engine just went down. I had a very, very short moment of thinking that I was in a nightmare and just dreaming. I was confused. I was really confused.
2 seconds later, the left engine also quits. The plane is now powerless.
One engine dropped, and then another engine dropped. I thought that it wasn't true. It wasn't true. It wasn't real.
Less than a minute and a half after takeoff, the DC-9 begins falling from the sky.
And after that, it was complete silence. And I think that was the worst moment for me. Just being in the air, and it's so quiet. It was like a bird just sailing through the sky. So then I started to get scared.
Engine relay.
As the pilots try to restart their engines, things get even worse. The left engine erupts in flames.
And I saw the exhaust gas temperature was rising rapidly. The max temperature was around 680 degrees Celsius, and I saw it go above 800.
A fire in the engine could spread to the rest of the plane.
Should I pull?
If Sedermark pulls the fire extinguisher in the left engine, he will never be able to restart it. He pulls the handle to put out the fire. From his seat, Captain Per Holmberg can see that the crew is in trouble. Flight 751 is now falling at a rate of 1,200 feet per minute. But air traffic controllers at the Stockholm airport have no idea the plane is in trouble.
Arlanda, Stockholm, Scandinavian 751.
Good morning, SK 751. Climb to flight level 180. We have problems with our engines, please.
We need to go back to Arlanda.
751, roger. Turn right, heading to here.
Suddenly, the radio goes dead. A result of the failed engines. Only the right engine can provide power, but it's now spinning too slowly to generate electricity for the instruments.
Without the engine, you don't have any propulsion, so the only energy you have is your height.
With time running out, the pilots of Flight 751 must find a way to restart the right engine, or else crash into the countryside below. Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751 is now falling from the sky at 20 feet per second.
How can I help?
Captain Per Holmberg, who boarded the flight as a passenger, becomes part of the flight crew.
He came out in the cockpit and he said, "Is there anything I can help you with?" I don't think I even said yes. I just said, "Start the APU."
If the auxiliary power unit can be launched, it will bring back the radio and instruments.
So I just handed him the emergency checklist and started focus on controlling the flight to see that we were maintaining the speed and the attitude and that we were wings level. He managed to start the auxiliary power unit, so my flight instruments were supplied from that.
But for some reason, Captain Rasmussen's instruments don't come back online.
He managed to fly the plane basically by feel.
Power is also restored to the cabin, but it's small comfort to passengers who now know they're in extreme danger. Stockholm Air Traffic Control instructs the pilots to return to the airport.
Scandinavian 751, are you able to turn right, heading 090, radar vectoring for 0-1?
But the plane is now just 1,600 feet from the ground. And First Officer Sedermark's attempts to resuscitate it aren't working.
Roger, we are maintaining our heading, but we are trying to restart our engines.
Making a 180-degree turn back to Stockholm could be catastrophic.
I really had the feeling that if I turned the aircraft at that time, we would have stalled.
When you're turning back, you are losing a lot of energy. So the most safe thing to do is actually just to go straight, keep your wings level. That means that you will use less energy of your altitude, so you can maintain your speed.
You can maintain 2,000 feet.
We are not able to maintain 2,000 feet. We are descending. We are at 1,600 feet and descending.
Holmberg wants Rasmussen to focus his attention on finding a landing spot.
Look straight ahead. Look straight ahead.
He was screaming at Stefan, just look straight ahead and watch the flight path.
Prepare for on-ground emergency.
On-ground emergency!
Bend down! Bend down! Bend down!
So we shouted bend down, I don't know how many times. Bend down, bend down, bend down.
Keep your seatbelts fastened.
While passengers brace, Rasmussen considers where to land his plane.
Look straight ahead.
And I had an idea that on the northern direction could bring us out to the Baltic Sea, which was at that time frozen. And that's an excellent runway.
But instead, he finds himself gliding powerlessly over a dense forest.
I saw that green area and I saw that little light spot in the middle of the forest, but that really looked short.
Steer right. Steer right.
Just 500 feet above the ground, Captain Rasmussen lifts the plane's nose to slow it down, hoping to soften the crash landing.
Pine trees from the top there look very soft. I could use the trees as almost like a pillow.
Should I lower the landing gear?
Yes. Gear down.
Bend down and hold your knees.
I prepared myself for a hard impact. If it's an emergency landing, we have no engines, I just thought this is going to be a hard landing.
Stockholm, Scandinavian 751, we are crashing into the ground now.
I wasn't afraid until we were flying into the trees. Then I was scared, and I knew we were not going to make it.
I didn't thought I should die. I knew I should die. I made me pray to God. And then, a moment after, we were in a strange world.
After we have come to a complete stop, I feel the smell of airplane fuel. I thought, okay, we're gonna explode. And I look around and I see the snow because there was a big crack in the airplane fuselage just in front of the aft galley. And you could just walk down on the ground.
Everything was quiet, and I woke up. It might only have been a split second or so.
I was afraid that my spine was broken, that I wouldn't be able to walk again. So I remember I was sitting there and I was moving my toes and my feet just to see if I could have control over them. I had a pain in my hand because I had broken a bone in my hand, and I was bleeding heavily from my forehead, so I was trying to get clear of all the blood that was coming down in my eyes. And Stefan told me that we had to get out of the aircraft.
After plowing through 125 meters of pine forest, the pilot's fear is now that the broken aircraft could catch fire. Dozens of passengers escape through the breaks in the fuselage walls. But Captain Per Holmberg has been knocked unconscious by the crash.
It all went so fast that no one could take in what happened. So I tried to stay with the group of passengers I had there. But I just knew the feeling also that we had to wait a long time for the rescue teams.
Help will be here soon.
Fortunately, no fire materializes. But because they removed their winter clothing while boarding the sweltering plane, many passengers are starting to freeze.
Most people were just standing in their shirts, t-shirts, very, very little clothes. Few didn't even have shoes on.
They are now at risk from hypothermia.
So I focused on being caring. Maybe I did it for my own sake also. I needed a hug also. It was comforting to comfort someone else.
The wreckage of Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751 lies just 15 kilometers northeast of Stockholm Arlanda Airport. The fuselage has broken into 3 pieces. In the chaos of the moment, nobody knows how many people have been killed in the crash. Rescuers arrive within minutes and attend to the freezing survivors. They pull Captain Per Holmberg from the cabin, unconscious.
He landed on the wall at impact, and he skidded down on the wall to the floor at impact. So he was quite badly damaged. He cut his eyelid, and he also got his collarbone that was broken off, so his shoulder was in front of him.
92 of the passengers have sustained injuries. Only 8 are considered serious. But when the crew conducts a head count, they're stunned to learn that out of the 129 people who boarded Flight 751, not a single one was killed in the crash.
Everyone survived. It was like a shock just to take in. Wow, that was a fantastic comment.
This was the happiest captain in the world. We were all alive. That was a great moment.
Reporters break the remarkable story to the world as the Swedish Accident Investigation Board, or SAIB, takes charge of the case. Scandinavian Airlines alerts its own investigators, dispatching Tori Hultgren to head up its team.
It's most unusual that the plane crashes in a wooded area and everybody survives. I've never heard of it before. The police kept everybody off the site itself. There was a cordon around the aircraft about 100 meters. We had a complete aircraft, nothing had burned, and we had lots of good data.
Henrik Ullander from the SAIB gets to work on the evidence.
And we all started to plan the documentation of the accident site, which means photographing all the fine little approach through the wood, you know, and to take photos of all the parts that were spread all over the place.
The 2 black boxes, which record cockpit conversations and store flight data, are recovered immediately. Investigators speak to survivors. Everyone tells a similar story.
Would you mind telling me what you saw and heard?
Loud, booming sounds from the engines moments after the flight began, smoke in the cabin, and finally the entire loss of power and an engine on fire.
You have a twin-engine aircraft, and you are really not supposed to lose both engines at the same time.
The Pratt & Whitney turbofan engines are sent to a Scandinavian Airlines repair shop for closer examination. Investigators are eager to speak with Captain Rasmussen about the incident. But to their dismay, Scandinavian Airlines takes him to the media first.
The first question, what did you think when both engines refused to function? It'll take me an awful long time to tell you all that.
The normal case is that the key witnesses, like the crew and so on, should be kept in quarantine until they meet the investigation board.
European media celebrate Captain Stefan Rasmussen as a hero for landing the DC-9 without engine power. But investigators consider the possibility that he or his co-pilot had made errors that caused the crisis in the first place.
The honor and the glory always rests with the captain, but so does also the mishaps.
I knew that being a person in the spotlight of the press would be a quite different situation. And I said to myself, the only thing you can do now is to give them all their story and then pray that they will find the reason.
Lars Lindberg is an investigative representative for the Swedish Airlines Pilot Association. He examines the wreckage for signs of mechanical or structural failure.
We knew both engines had failed for some reason, so we was concerned what was the background for something like that to happen. The first time I saw the engines in the workshop, I was surprised.
Is this all they found?
There was a number of parts that were completely missing, and this was something we hadn't seen before to this extent.
To find out what happened, investigators must find the missing pieces, which now lies somewhere in snow-covered fields and forests. A close study of Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751's engines reveals exactly which pieces are missing.
Parts of this aircraft was shedding parts from both engines. And then what you do is you go further in and you document everything and you try to find the root cause and see how it all comes together.
The missing pieces could hold the key to discovering why both of the plane's engines quit within seconds of each other. But they could be anywhere along the 15-kilometer route the aircraft covered during its short flight. They must be found. Investigators use the flight data recorder to map the plane's journey and determine where engine parts may have fallen. After scouring the snow-covered fields along the plane's path, the recovery team finds 500 fragments. Just a fraction of what's missing. Many are very badly damaged. Some of the titanium blades actually seem to have been on fire.
You had this titanium fire inside both engines, both the right and the left engine. And this titanium fire is a very unique occurrence. It's requiring very, very high pressure and very high temperature for a titanium blade to catch fire.
Investigators dig deeper into the cause of the engine trouble. The left engine's fuel line is badly dented. It was obviously hit by a fast-moving piece of metal inside the engine. The impact caused it to rupture.
This part got dislodged, it went out and hit the fuel line, and that fuel line cracked, sprayed fuel onto the hot engine.
The engine was clearly coming apart during the flight.
That sounds serious.
The discovery explains the fire in the left engine and why so many pieces of it were found so far from the crash site. But investigators are left wondering why the engines broke up in the first place. A major clue comes from passenger and crew testimonies, which told of repeated booming noises before the left engine caught fire. The cockpit voice recorder picked up these sounds.
So you can hear that, and we could correlate that with when the damage occurred. You can see that on the flight data recorder.
The sounds are familiar to investigators and leave no doubt. The DC-9's engines began surging shortly after takeoff. Jet engines rely on a steady stream of air for combustion. A series of fans move incoming air through various stages of compression. But when that flow is disrupted, fuel at the rear of the engines ignites violently and shoots forward.
That's a surge. You can have a small surge and you can have a large surge. And you can have the complete surge on the whole engine.
Sounds serious.
This surge process was very violent, so after a very short time, we had an aircraft with two engines that could not be restarted, that didn't generate any thrust. Basically, you had a giant glider at that point.
A closer look at the fan blades from the front of the engines explains why they were surging. They're badly dented. The damage would have prevented them from effectively directing air to the rear of the engines.
This damage that twisted the fan blade started this process. You got this disturbed air in the fan, you got this rotating fan stall that then triggered this whole breakdown, the compressor surge, and then the whole process that led up to the dual engine failures.
But what exactly mangled the blades? There are ways to tell.
If it comes from a stone, rubber, ice, and so on, you can see it on the shape of the damage. The ice causes very specific damages. It's sort of like a soft dent.
Analysis of dent patterns on the fan blades is conclusive. They were struck by ice. Now investigators want to find out where the ice could have come from.
Weather data for the 24 hours leading up to the crash.
They know Stockholm had been hit with rain and snow in the hours before Flight 751 took off.
It was a situation with the temperature around 0 degrees. It was a drizzle, snow, rain in the morning.
They learned that the DC-9 arrived from Zurich the night before, with the fuel tanks more than half full.
They had quite a large amount of reserve fuel, of diversion fuel, in their wings. The fuel in the wing tanks were close to minus 20 degrees Celsius.
The conditions that night were ideal for the formation of clear ice on the wing surface.
And here you had very, very cold fuel on the top wing skin. And as the temperature dropped during the night, it went to snow and rain, and finally snow. So there was a layer cake. Ice at the bottom, slush, and snow on top. About 10 inches total on top of the wings in the morning.
Responsibility for de-icing the plane ultimately falls on the captain. Rasmussen insists he was aware of the overnight buildup. Investigators wonder if the pilot did all he could to ensure his plane was completely free of ice. Rasmussen claims he instructed technicians to de-ice the plane thoroughly.
I didn't walk around with the aircraft. It was cold, it was frosty.
Noticing that there was still frost on the wings, the head technician ordered a second round of de-icing.
I was really convinced that the aircraft was clean. And so was he,
Where are we now with the de-icing? The wings aren't quite done. They've done the underside.
The cockpit voice recorder backs up Rasmussen's testimony.
They've got it good and clean under the wings? Yes.
They de-iced the aircraft once and looked at it and I said, once more. And they de-iced us the second time.
In fact, a total of 850 liters of fluid was sprayed on the aircraft. But the fluid may have been faulty, not potent enough to melt the thick layer of ice that had accumulated on the wings overnight. Technicians test samples of the fluid used to de-ice Flight 751.
We found no discrepancies. There was nothing wrong with any of the fluids used.
But when investigators interview the maintenance crew that worked on the plane, they begin wondering if the de-icing team was thorough enough in their efforts. The ground crew insists that after they sprayed the wing, it appeared to be clean. But that appearance was deceptive.
It looked perfect because the clear ice on top of the fuel tanks, you cannot see the clear ice.
A technician inspected the front of the wing and found no ice. He couldn't have known that there was ice further back, out of his reach.
No provisions for stairs or anything that he could use to get up on the wing at the de-icing platform. It looked shiny and nice, couldn't see any ice on it, but still there was maybe an inch of ice on top of the wing when the aircraft took off.
As soon as the plane took flight, the ice became a problem.
On this aircraft, the engines are positioned behind the wings, and as the aircraft rotated and the wings bent in order to take the weight of the aircraft, this ice in the wing roots loosened and it sucked right into the engine.
The ice damaged the fan blades at the front of the engines and ultimately caused them to begin surging.
Nobody really expected that this would happen, or could happen, but it did.
When ice breaks off the wings during flight, it doesn't pose a problem for most aircraft. But the placement of a DC-9's engines leaves them more susceptible to being struck. The Pratt & Whitney engines on Flight 751 were designed to withstand this type of ice ingestion. Something else must explain the disaster. Investigators know that the wrong reaction by a pilot can make surges worse. They comb through the flight data to see what these pilots did when the emergency struck.
The first thing you do when you have a surge, if you recognize it as a surge, is that you reduce power.
Captain Rasmussen claims he did just that.
Of course, you just pull the throttle back, and then you have the balance between the incoming fuel and incoming air. And that was actually what I did.
But the flight data recorder tells a different story.
Why is the engine power increasing?
It clearly shows that in the moments after the surge, thrust was reduced, but then seconds later was increased to beyond full power.
Yeah, it didn't add up because the RPM was increasing to 110%, and the throttle position was moving. It shouldn't be. The only thing that could move the throttles in clamp was the pilot's hand.
But if Rasmussen didn't push the throttles forward, something else did. It would explain the captain's confusion as his engines began to surge.
As a pilot, when you've gone through the training, you've done all your emergency training, you've been through the simulator, and now you have a system that is doing something that you don't expect, it's very confusing.
Despite their relentless efforts, investigators can find no possible explanation for the increase in thrust.
The frustrating part with the investigation was that we could not figure out why the system did what it did.
Then, almost 2 months after the accident, the plane's manufacturer provides the answer. The culprit is something called automatic thrust restoration.
It's brand new. It automatically increases the thrust during the climb.
Swedish authorities learned that automatic thrust restoration, or ATR, was recently introduced as a safety feature on Scandinavian Airlines planes. It existed because the FAA had discovered some pilots were throttling back considerably while taking off and landing to reduce noise over residential neighborhoods. The ATR was designed to make it impossible for them to throttle back to dangerous levels.
So as soon as he powered back, the system kicked in.
Investigators learned that when Rasmussen reduced power to clear his engine surge, the system read this as a dangerously low power setting and pushed the throttles forward. The increased thrust made the surging worse until the engines destroyed themselves. The investigation concludes that the pilots had taken the right steps to clear the surge and prevent the catastrophe. But the computer code which governs the ATR undermined their efforts.
A strip of zeros and ones caused the throttles to move and caused the engines that were stalling because they already got too much fuel, got even more fuel. And they went into self-destruct, both engines. In a few seconds, they're both totally destroyed.
The system was so new to Scandinavian Airlines that nobody there had even heard of it.
And it was confusing for everyone because we didn't know about the system, we didn't have information on the system. SAS didn't know the system existed on their aircraft.
We hadn't bought that modification. And it was sneaked in via another system.
Because he didn't know about the ATR, Rasmussen was unaware that he could only save his plane by switching it off. News that the automatic thrust restoration was responsible for the accident proved both a blessing and a curse for Captain Rasmussen. It eliminated any notion that he had made a mistake.
When I got that message, I was really released. It was like winning in the lottery. It was, because I was so happy. Because then I could explain why I was in that total cone of confusion.
But the fallout would ultimately destroy a love affair and end a career. On October the 20th, 1993, the Swedish Accident Investigation Board releases its report on the crash of Flight 751. It determines that the actions of Captain Rasmussen and First Officer Sedermark contributed to the safe outcome of this incident. And although investigators question Captain Per Holmberg's decision to enter the cockpit in the first place, they do praise his contribution.
This crew flew until they stood still on the ground. They never gave up. They never gave up. They didn't give an inch.
The investigators put much of the blame for the accident on Scandinavian Airlines because their procedures for checking for clear ice were inadequate.
I believe it's a compressor stall.
The report also condemns the fact that the pilots didn't know about the automatic thrust restoration and how it would act in a surge situation.
If the ATR system hadn't been there, if the trolleys hadn't moved forward, there wouldn't have been an accident.
It was a bit strange that we didn't have all the documentation available to us, so we knew what we could expect if something like this would happen.
In the wake of the crash, Scandinavian Airlines started training its pilots how to use the ATR system. They also implemented steps to ensure airplanes don't take off with clear ice on the wings.
We changed all the procedures, we provided stairs for the mechanic, and we made it a requirement to go up on top of the wing and touch it with your hand to verify after de-icing.
After healing from his injuries, First Officer Ulf Sedermark returned to the cockpit.
I didn't feel the responsibility that I wouldn't be able to do my job again. Whatever happens, I know that I still can see things for what they are. And I still love doing my job, and if something bad happens, I can deal with it.
But Stefan Rasmussen's return proved far more difficult.
Set power.
After I'd heard from a high-skilled psychologist, we talked about getting in the air again. He knew that would be a hard decision to take.
Gear up. Fire drill.
After time in the simulator, Rasmussen couldn't regain confidence in his plane.
Sorry, guys.
In a disaster situation, in a crisis, is that you have optimized the teamwork between man and machine. I really felt that I didn't trust the aircraft.
Pilots tend to take the responsibility for all that went wrong. Too much of the glory and also too much of the responsibility.
With the right counseling, about 90% of pilots involved in an accident are able to continue flying. Even though Captain Rasmussen received treatment, his career ended with the crash of Flight 751.
Taking that decision to leave aviation as pilot was like having your highest love and come to that conclusion that you have to kill her. I had many hours, many missions of happiness in an aircraft. And I loved my passengers, I loved my aircraft so much, so I said, that's it. I never regretted, never. And I think I was right.